Hello guys, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto was the son of two villains but fall in love with a heroine? If you enjoy this video then please like, share and do comment. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. So let us start the story.
Issei Hyodo was many things. But lucky with the ladies. Not so much. Despite his dreams of being a harem king, he never expected to be in this situation. In front of Issei stood a girl. She had long black hair and large assets. The reason Issei was caught off guard was what he thought he heard her say. "I am sorry, what?" Issei cleaned his ears thinking he heard wrong. "Please go out with me." The girl Amano Yuma bowed her head down as if embarrassed, but if you looked close enough you would see a small smirk on her face. Rias was sitting on the couch in Naruto's house. Akeno was next to her while Sona and Naruto were at the table playing a game of chess. Suddenly a light came from the corner of the room and out stepped Kaneko to Rias, knight. She slowly walked to the seat across from Rias and sat quietly and pulled out sweets and started to eat them. While this usually would be normal, Kaneko had a task given to her by Rias and her arrival could only mean one thing. "So the crows have decided to show their faces, how interesting." The voice was that of Naruto. While he normally would be cheerful and childish, he was sounding serious. The only thing was he was not taking the fallen angel threat serious. No, the reason he was serious was the chess game he was playing with Sona. I wonder what their goal is. Well, hopefully it's not too boring. Yes, I hope this brings some excitement to Kuo. It's been boring ever since Sona stopped our weekly baseball games. Rias responded with a smirk. "I wouldn't have had to stop it if you didn't use magic and stop breaking the bats. Besides, you two should take this threat more seriously. This incident could spark a war." Sona didn't look up, but Rias could almost feel the glare. But they knew she was right. If one of them were to slip up and get hurt, no doubt Azazel would have some explaining to do. "Well, either way, this means the two of you will have to reincarnate those two you have claimed." Checkmate Sotan. Sona was left gaping like a fish. She has never lost chess to anyone but Naruto and Rias, but she has never beaten Naruto. This really was hurting her pride. "Don't forget you have to hang out with me this weekend for 6 hours and you can't complain, got it?" She could do nothing but nod. This really was confusing her how he was always winning. "Now if you don't mind, I have a few contracts I must get to." With that he left, leaving a deflated Sona, a giggling Akeno and Rias, and a silent Kaneko. "There is something I want to do to celebrate our first date. Can you listen to my wish?" What is the wish you want? Will you die for me? That is. Sorry, can you repeat that again? I think there's something wrong with my ears. Will you die for me? Suddenly wings with feathers as black as midnight sprouted from her back. She started laughing like a madwoman. Then a buzzing noise reaches Issei's ears. It's coming from her hand. When he looks, he sees a spear. She raised her arm and with a whoosh the spear was launched at Issei. When he looked down, the spear had already pierced his stomach. "You were a threat to us. If you want to blame someone, blame God. He's the one that gave you the sacred gear." "Sacred what?" Issei brought his hand to his stomach and then back to his face. It was coated in the crimson liquid known as blood. The blood was a crimson that reminded him of something he saw almost every day. The crimson hair of the beauty known as Rias Gremory. It's just like her hair. Man, I really am going to die. If only I got to grope her boobs. Suddenly a light came from his pocket. When he looked down, he saw the leaflet he received earlier that day. As he continued his dying thoughts, the light of the leaflet grew brighter and brighter and Rias Gremory appeared from the light. Issei could do nothing but stare at her as if she was some kind of angel. Issei himself couldn't see who it was. All he knew was they had crimson red hair. His vision was so blurry that he didn't even trust his eyes. "So you were the one who called me." She spoke in a melodious voice. "Looks like you are dying. Your wound. Oh my. Looks like something interesting is happening to you." "So it's you. This truly is interesting." She's laughing as if she found something interesting. "If you are dying, then I'll pick it up. Your life, that is. From now, you will live for me." With that he blacked out. Naruto came out from behind the trees when she finished reincarnating him. Era, you had such a lovely script prepared, maybe I should put you in a movie." His comment made her blush, but he couldn't see it since her back was toward him. "Well, now you have another peerage member. I guess if you train him well enough he could help you with your problem." He noticed her nod, but she didn't take her focus away from healing him and cleaning the area before any humans noticed all the blood. I still don't see why you just don't let me handle him, but okay, have it your way. Good night, Rias-chan, I'll see you at school tomorrow. With that he left and returned to his house, but not before looking at the prone form of Issei. Things really will be fun around here. Baka, this is a matter of my pride as a devil, plus I can't have you doing all the fighting for me. Besides, my cute little pawn will do big things in the future. The next day Issei was walking home, after part of a porn session with his friends Matsuda and Motohama. He left because he felt something weird was happening with his body and it was confusing him. But he suddenly stopped. He felt as if someone was watching him. He turned and there was a man in a suit with a top hat staring at him. He felt his own body tremble as the man narrowed his gaze. The man spoke to him, but Issei was scared by him and didn't care for his words before taking off. Trying to run away? Who is your master? It must be a person with a very low rank or with a weird hobby to choose this place as a territory. So, who is your master? He turned and entered a park. It was the same park that he went to with Yuma. The man he was running from him was behind him. Did you think I'd let you escape? That's why lowly beings are a pain to handle. Wings sprouted from the man's back and Issei suddenly felt a wave of deja vu hit him. Tell me the name of your master. It's a hindrance to get bothered by your kind. For that, we will. Wait, are you a stray? If you have no master, then that will explain the worried expression on your face. The man summoned a spear made of light in his hand. If you are a stray, then there will be problem if I kill you. The man threw the spear and it pierced Issei through the stomach. Issei felt pain. It was unlike anything he felt before. Blood started coming out from his mouth and he fell to his knees. Oh, I thought that would be enough to kill you. But I guess your body is tougher than I imagined. But don't worry, the next one will kill you. The man created another spear and threw it at Issei. Issei closed his eyes expecting death but was surprised when nothing came. He opened his eyes and noticed the spear that was about to kill him was frozen in ice inches away from his face. He heard the man in the suit growl, and the sound of shoes hitting the ground. Suddenly a masculine but childish voice came from behind him. I would appreciate it if you wouldn't hit my friend's cute little pawn. Issei lost consciousness and hit the ground after that and didn't hear anything else, not knowing the identity of his rescuer. The ice, you must be the son of Leviathan. My name is Naruto Sea-Tree Fallen Angel-kun. This little one is not a stray, and this town is under my surveillance. I would not get in the way, unless you wish to be destroyed. The voice of Naruto was sharp and made the fallen recoil a little bit. I will say the same to you. My name is Danashik. I pray that we never meet again, son of Leviathan. The now named Danashik flew off but couldn't help but shiver at the powerful aura he felt. My name is Hyodo Issei. What's your name? My name is Asia Argento. Please call me Asia. Then, Asia-san, let's meet again. Yes, Issei-san, I will definitely come and see you. This isn't good. Rias turned to Naruto, who is with her watching Issei from afar. He is getting attached to her. Unless the fallen angels attack again, we can't get involved with them, and if they are planning on doing what I think they're doing, this won't be good for him. He spoke with a frown marring his face. What do you think they're planning? I thought they were just randomly moving. Rias looked thoughtful as if looking for a pattern. I've read about something like this before. Fallen angels gather at a church and get a person with a sacred gear. They then perform a ritual to take out the sacred gear of a person. It's usually those who are acting alone perform the ritual. Rias almost instantly put the pieces together. She obviously has a sacred gear with healing powers. So I guess she is the sacrifice. If Issei gets attached and they kill her, that was not a good thought. Maybe I'll just have to let him get attached. It could be a nice stepping stone to get him used to battle. Besides, she could be a good bishop. Well, who knows what will happen. Naruto caught the look in her eyes, then nodded and sighed. He got the message, don't interfere in this. Rias and Naruto nodded to each other before teleporting away. All devils have two sins. A primary sin and a secondary. Rias was pride with greed as a secondary. Sona was envy with greed as a secondary. Searsex's Lucifer was pride with greed as a secondary. Seraphol Leviathan was wrath with lust as a secondary. Minato Namikaze was lust with pride as a secondary. Naruto on the other hand was lust with wrath as a secondary. The secondary sin grows in around the 13th birthday. A devil receives their sins from their family most times. Some devils grow into a sin. Seraphal was one such case. She gained her wrath after the Great War and lust after meeting Minato towards the end of the Great War when she was in her late teens. Although devils could be influenced by all seven, their top two were just more prominent and the other five are on an equal footing buried deep in their being. A devil could go their whole life without drawing on the other sins. A devil whose second sin is triggered is barely in control of themselves. The primary sin is the easiest to control. All it takes is a little training and it is hard for a devil to lose control of the primary sin. The secondary is more tricky. It takes years, sometimes decades to control it, since it is in as deeper part of the being. Before it is controlled, a devil is considered young and maturing. Once a devil can control one's secondary sin, they are considered fully mature, and gained a boost in control of magic. Rias was currently getting greedy, but it was understandable. Here she had support-type sacred gear that was emotionally attached to her pawn, and she was effectively kidnapped, making her pawn want to go rescue her. She was enticed and now she could barely control her greed. She first got a dragon-type sacred gear and now could get a rare support-type. She could almost feel a shiver go down her spine. But right now what was important was to discourage Issei until she could finish her planning. So far she knew the major components, but she was lost on when to attack. Naruto foretold the ritual happening tonight. She could storm in right now and face them during their preparations for the ritual, or tonight when at least one fallen would be out of the fight. While the fallen were significantly weaker than her, this wasn't her fight. She wanted to get a gauge of Issei's base skill. While they were already low, nearly zero, she still wanted to get a better gauge, and this could spark some growth. She had told Naruto to not interfere with Issei, so he was sitting back. But he claimed he wanted to storm the church. At first she assumed he wanted to reincarnate a fallen when they begged for life. But she threw that out when she remembered his feelings towards Akano. He knew her distrust to fallens, and even though he plans to get rid of it, he said he needed the right setting. So for now she would assume he just wanted to have some fun. Currently she was sitting back watching Issei go out with Asia. He promised to show her around and Rias had no doubt that the fallen would come for Asia. She would watch to make sure the fallen couldn't kill him. She saw the fallen appear, so she readied herself to interfere if necessary. Issei stood protectively in front of the nun and prepared for a battle. As he prepared for a fight, the fallen created a light spear and threw it straight into Issei's gut. She was prepared to go and get him, but she watched fascinated as the nun started healing him with her sacred gear. She saw him get up and look towards the retreating form of the fallen and nun. She turned to take her leave. Rias was scolding Issei. The pawn was trying to argue his case back to his king, but she was not listening. Hiding in the trees, Naruto had to smirk. The kid's got balls. I like him already, the mayhem we can cause together. As he mentally chuckled evilly, he didn't hear the rest of the conversation. He then returned his attention to the conversation going on in the room. I've got an urgent thing to do now. Akano and I will go out for a bit. Bucko. I haven't finished talking. Rias put her index finger on Issei's lips, effectively shutting him up. Issei, there are a couple of things I need to tell you. First one, you think that a pawn is a weak piece, right? Am I right? He nodded quietly to her question. That's a big misunderstanding. Pawn has a special ability that no other pieces have. That ability is the promotion. Curiosity ran across Issei's face. His confused face looked so idiotically hilarious that Naruto had to bite on his tongue so he would not give himself away. Just like the actual chess game, pawn can change into other classes if they reach the opponent's base. They are able to promote to any other piece besides the king piece. Issei, when you step foot in the location I acknowledge as enemy's base, you are able to change into any piece besides the king. The most excited look appeared on his face. He looked as if he was about to do something stupid. If the look on his face was any indication, it was a good thing they knew what idiotic thing he was doing. Since it hasn't been that long since you became a devil, there are restrictions, so it's probably still impossible for you to be promoted to the ultimate piece, a queen. But you could change to other classes. If you wish strongly for promotion within your heart, then there will be a change in your ability. He saw Issei perk up as if he just discovered a hidden gold mine. Also, one more thing. It's about the sacred gear. When you use your sacred gear, just remember this: desire. Sacred gear is driven with the power of desire. And it also determines the power for it as well. Even though you are a devil, your will to desire hasn't been lost. The stronger you desire, the stronger your sacred gear will respond to. One last thing you should never forget, eyes. Even a pawn can take down the king. This is basic in chess. This truth also applies for the devil's chess pieces. You can become stronger. With her piece said, Rias and Akeno left the room. Naruto took that as his cue and hopped off the branch he was on. He walked around to the entrance of the old school building and met up with Akeno and Rias. Rias-chan, you ready? The smile on all of their faces grew and they brought out their wings and flew off. Things really are getting interesting. I hope they can fight. Era such scary crows. Naruto makes a playful comment as the Fallens struggle against his chains made from ice. You know, the harder you struggle the tighter they get. As if reacting to his words, the chains tightened, causing the Fallen to gasp for air as the chain wouldn't budge from around their necks. Danashik glared heavily at Naruto. Ma Don-chan. The girl's sweat dropped and Danashik's eye twitched. I warned you what would happen if you continued to encroach on my territory. He felt a shiver G down his spine. I mean Rias-chan's territory. Thank you, Naruto-kun. Now Fallen, what do you have to say for yourselves? She was met with looks of defiance and glares. Seeing this, she sighed and shook her head. She started raising her power and conjured some balls of destruction. Nothing? Very well, be gone. She launched the balls of destruction at the three Fallen. She turned and looked at a moaning Akeno and a daydreaming Naruto looking in between the two of them. She sweat dropped at their quirks, Naruto with his lust and Akeno's sadism. Now let's go see what my cute little pawn is doing. Akeno and Rias turned and saw Naruto bringing his wings back out. You're not coming with us? Rias asked with a tilt of the head. No, this is your pawn's trial. It's a peerage matter. I have no plans of interfering more than this. Besides, if So-tan sees I'm not home, she might freak out, especially on a school night. Rias had to stifle a chuckle at that. Even though they lived in two separate houses, Sona seemed to always know when Naruto was not in his house. They didn't know how, as she didn't tell, but that was until Naruto saw her familiar checking up on him at night around 11:30 every night they weren't together. I shall take my leave now. Oh, and don't tell Issei about me. I want to make my introduction fun. With that he laughed evilly and left. I think he's going to scar Issei for life. Rias had to shiver at the thought of Naruto's version of fun. The thought of Naruto's fun is so enticing. Akeno thought with a shiver, but her shiver was entirely different from Rias. Naruto entered the old school building heading to the orc room, only to stop when he felt two presences. Normally he would just walk in, but Issei was in there and he didn't have time to finish his introduction. So he stuck to waiting for Issei to leave. He could tell Rias noticed his presence because she paused momentarily in her speech. But she recovered without Issei catching on. Bucko? If there is the same number of evil pieces as in chess itself, then it's possible to get 7 other pawns besides me, right? So will there be a day when another pawn besides me will join us? The perverted boy asked his master. No, my only pawn is you, Issei. Naruto could almost imagine what thoughts were going through the boy's mind. It was probably along the line of, this is a confession. There's a saying like this in the world of chess. Queens have a value of 9 pawns. Rooks have a value of 5 pawns. Knights and bishops have a value of 3 pawns each. Like this, there are standard values that also apply to the evil pieces. A similar phenomenon happens to those reincarnated. If there are those who can only be reincarnated with 2 knight pieces, then there are also those who need 2 rook pieces to be reincarnated. There's also the compatibility with the pieces as well. You can't use 2 separate pieces to give them different roles, so it's important to think how to use the pieces. Once you use it, devils won't be given a new, evil pieces. How is that related to me? Issei, I used all of the pawn pieces when I resurrected you. If I hadn't, I couldn't have made you into a devil. I didn't know what made you worth 8 at first, but now I know it's the Longinus class sacred gear you possess. It is only the second Longinus I've seen. She muttered the last part, her voice full of jealousy, and Naruto couldn't help but silently laugh. What is a Longinus? Rainier said something similar. I didn't explain it, did I? It was worded like a question, but it was a statement. A Longinus is a sacred gear that at its most powerful has the potential and power to kill a god. Her words sunk in. Issei was quiet for a moment as if he was in awe. Wait, did you just say second? Issei's voice filled with confusing and it almost made Naruto laugh out loud. Who is it? Don't worry about it for now. Issei, she got his attention after her dismissal of his question. There are several devils without sacred gears that are stronger than you. He deflated at that comment. So do your best and aim to be the top pawn in the underworld, the strongest pawn. He heard the cushions on the couch shift, giving him the picture of someone getting up. This is a good luck charm. He heard a kissing sound and nearly bust down the door. He was barely controlling himself from running in the room. He heard Asia come out and they continued to talk for a few minutes before Issei and Asia came out. When they did come out, Naruto hid his presence and made sure to not get noticed. He entered the room and saw Rias sitting by herself. He sat across from her and continued to look at her. But he suddenly jumped on her and cried anime tears. Rias-chan, how could you cheat on me? Rias rolled her eyes as rivers started to fall from his eyes. She roughly grabbed his cheek and pulled while causing him to stand up. OWWWWWW. Why is Chan stew up with her words? He whined through her pinch. I would if you started acting befitting of me. She watched him calm down before letting him go. Now if you would let me explain, I didn't kiss his lips if that's what you're scared of. He suddenly jumped her again. You do still love me. He tried to kiss her, but before his lips could touch her face he was grabbed from behind and pulled into another's grasp. Era, you're awfully excited today. Maybe I could help you work off that energy. He immediately knew it was Akano. Her words were seductive, eliciting a shiver from Naruto. When he turned to face her, though, his head was once again grabbed and he was pulled back again. This time by Rias. Above his head he could feel the lightning flowing between the two. Seeing where this was going, he got out of the hold, and while the two were preoccupied he escaped. Nothing was said as Naruto teleported and arrived back at his house and was met with the sight of ByrdvsET doing yoga with a TV program right in front of Naruto's arrival area. He had blue sweatbands around his head and wrist, and was in a disfigured-looking crow pose. The room was awkward. After a minute of no one talking and Bova not changing his position, Naruto left and Bova went back to his yoga. When he left, he was met with a naked Valerie coming out the bath. Both of their cheeks turned red and Naruto looked away. His thought process: I might have a healthy appreciation, but I'm not a pervert. Arrow Gigi is enough of a pervert. But behind him the heads of his grandfather and father were floating. Gaki, if you look you will get to see the best of the world in the form of Oppai. Whereas his dad was more, if you look now then you are one step closer to giving me grandchildren. Either way they weren't a help. In the end Naruto braved himself to walk through. Excuse me, trying to get through, sorry. He walked past with barely an ounce of control in him. Why did my queen have to be a chick that is hot but doesn't know what hot is? He was true. Valerie only knew hot as temperature and pink. Not being out in society as a teen really didn't help either. Now that he thought about it, there was a lot he kept on forgetting to teach Valerie. Well, he might as well do it now. Mwahahahahahahaha. Naruto-kun, you're maniacally laughing again. Valerie's voice cut through his ears and stopped his laugh. TCH, damn thin walls. Rias is with Naruto, Issei doesn't know yet. Issei was having a glorious dream. He was surrounded by his friends and family. He was in a tuxedo and was standing next to a chapel. In front of him there was Rias Gremory. She was in wedding dress that barely hid her breast from him. While standing there he could do nothing more than imagine the wedding night. He let a perverted expression marred his face. Suddenly the dream was cut off and everyone around him disappeared, and standing next to him was Giant Dragon. So let me get this straight. Issei had a dream about you. A nod was the response. That was interrupted by the dragon in his sacred gear. Another nod was given. I don't know whether to feel bad for Issei that his dream was interrupted or thankful of the dragon for stopping it. Who knows what the dream was about? The speaker Naruto was smacked in the back of the head by a red-faced Rias. That's strange though. Rias looked at him expectantly, which he caught. I had a weird dream last night too. Oh, what was it about? Rias looked up curiously as this seemed to be an interesting tale. So when I was born this giant fox came out of nowhere and killed my parents, and weirdest thing, I had a different mother. Instead of Ka-tan it was that member of Tusan's harem, Kushina-chan. Rias nodded slowly. This was not what she was expecting. So it skipped like 13 years and it showed this girl. She was stalking me. Then it skipped again. This time me and that stalker chick were married. It was strange, and kind of fucked up. He was then chastised by Rias for cursing. Yeah. Now back to the dream. We had kids, and this is where it became a nightmare. My firstborn was a spoiled brat who's stepping out of line. This boy, he spoke in an exasperated tone. He told my dream self he was lucky his parents died. Then my dream self did nothing about it. He just let his son disrespect him and the memory of his parents. That's time out and punishment at the least. I called Tucson a perverted freak when I learned some of the things in that diary, and Ka Tan spanked me with magic. He was waving his hands in the air to get his irritation and annoyance through to her. Rias could only look on amused as Naruto was trying to explain his frustration in the dream. He was mad that he married his stalker and his son knew no discipline. It was so cute how he looked like he was ready to explode. But she was getting tired of his antics. Naruto-kun. He stopped mid-rant and looked at her. While that's an interesting story, shouldn't you focus on introducing yourself to my newer pieces? I could really use your help with training. She really did want his help. If anyone could motivate Issei into training, it was Naruto. His words would motivate anyone, and he mastered the teaching method of practical learning. Oh, I already have it planned for today. It will be a moment Issei never forgets. Mwahahahahaha. Rias could only sweat drop and fear for her, pawn, and his psyche. But before she could question him, the door was opened by Issei. Before he could react, a giant pie slammed into his face and a bunch of screams, crashes and the sound of gears turning all echoed throughout the old school building. She did not want to know what happened to him. After all, only one person has come out of Naruto's greeting and hasn't been scarred. Suddenly a sneeze sounded through the room. A Kano came out of the back of the orc with tea. Was someone thinking about me? When she received no answer, she just continued to place the tea down for Rias and Naruto. If you looked closely, you would see a euphoric look on her face. Naruto's greetings just tickle me. She put a hand to her face and a blush spread out, allowing Rias and Naruto to understand what she was thinking. Rias responded with a sweat drop and Naruto a smirk. Kiba and Kaneko emerged through the door with a battered Issei and a worried-looking Asia. Issei was covered in fake scales and had a fake dragon tail and wings sticking out of his back. On his forehead was a stamp that read, "Property of Rias Gremory." And on his chest in blood-red paint was the stylized words, "Naruto Citri was here." He had his eyes wide open and they were searching around the room as if he was still getting attacked. In the end, Rias had to cast a spell on him that put him to sleep. "Naruto, why did you have to scare my pawn? Now I have to seal this part of his memories." She whined as he gained an amused look at the scene. Kaneko dropped Issei rather roughly, leaving Kiba to sit him gently on the ground, leaning against the wall. Rias began to seal the memories while Kaneko and Kiba took their seats on the couch. Kiba next to Naruto and Kaneko across from the two. Rias went to her sit behind her desk with a Kano standing behind her as they stayed in silence waiting for Issei to wake up. Naruto completing homework, Kiba fiddling with his swords, Kaneko her sweets, and Asia looking at Issei with worry evident in her eyes. When Issei started shuffling, Naruto snapped his fingers and all evidence of the greeting disappeared. Issei opened his eyes and looked around. First he noticed a worried Asia and flashed her a smile which seemed to calm her. He looked and noticed Kaneko ignoring him. Kiba looked at him and smiled before going back to his sword. Akano was blushing and biting on her finger. Rias looked annoyed and was glaring in front of her. When he looked in the same direction and saw the black-haired enemy of all males at Kuo Academy, Naruto Shitori. Issei was plain confused. This was a club for devils, so what was he doing here? Naruto-senpai, what are you doing here? Naruto suddenly gained an amused look in his eye and seemed to be thinking on something. After a couple seconds he changes his posture, and he crossed his legs, one over the other, and folded his hands over his lap, intertwining his fingers. His left eye seemed to shimmer before a monocle appeared, with a gray beard appearing on his upper lip and his hair on top of his head shimmering before turning gray. You see, young Issei, I'm Rias-chan's father in disguise, Z's. His sentence was cut off by his head falling back and him starting to snore. Rias gained a tick mark at the other pure-blooded devil in the room. She sent out a pulse of power that shook the room and made the sleeping devil jolt awake. Huh, what? He looked around, spinning his head rapidly. When he focused on a non-believing Issei, he huffed and got rid of the costume. Rias then cut in to hurry up their introductions. Issei, this is Naruto Citri, a pure-blooded devil, just like me. A look of understanding ran across his face, but he was still wary around his sworn enemy. Rias wore a triumphant smirk as Naruto glared at her. But Naruto's glare turned into a smirk and Rias felt a headache coming. I'm also the fiancé of Rias Gremory and Akeno Himejima. His declaration shocked Issei to the core. Rias saw this coming, as did Akeno, but both were still left blushing. But to Issei this took one of his major dreams away from him. He couldn't touch those heavenly mounds. Now Naruto had the smirk on his face, and it was Rias' turn to glare. Now she had to comfort her perverted servant. Bucko, is it true? Say it's not true? Now I can't touch those oppai. Issei asked while crying comically. Everyone could only sweat drop at the perverted boy's one-track mind. Issei, as of right now he isn't my fiancé. Rias stated calmly but also looking at Naruto through the corners of her eyes, who smirk at the unspoken part, riser first. She looked at a smiling Issei. Issei then started glaring at Naruto. Senpai, I'll just have to touch her oppai before you can. Naruto's sweat dropped in Rias' smirk at the fires burning in Issei's eyes. Naruto was already giving him determination even if he didn't know it. The glaring contest came to an end by Rias making her presence known. Now that you two are being civil, we have more pressing matters to deal with. With that, Naruto was officially made an important part of Issei and Asia's lives, even if they didn't know it yet. Time skip. Nighttime. Naruto's room. A flash of red entered Naruto's field of vision and he smirked. Rias emerged out from the circle in her nightgown, also donning a smirk. He watched as she climbed under the bed with the ever-present smirk on her face. After they both were under the covers they waited. But they didn't have to wait long, as another magic circle lit up where Rias was. Not wasting another moment, Naruto quickly positioned himself over top of Rias. When the light died down, Graphia quickly stepped out of the magical circle and had a shocked expression on her face. Naruto-sama, Rias-sama, what are you doing? The two teens looked at her in mock fright and shock. But that stopped when they both stopped being able to contain their laughter. The two were laughing even harder at seeing the confused face of Graphia. Naruto threw the cover off of them, allowing Graphia to see their fully clothed bodies. She let a sigh go and gave the two a brief glare. Naruto-sama, Rias-sama, it is not nice to prank people. With each word the temperature of the room got colder and the two started to sweat despite the chill. They gulped and nodded, leaving a stoic Graphia with an amused glint in her eye. Naruto watched as Rias left with Graphia staying a little longer, leaving. He turned to sleep, getting the message from the actions of Graphia. Tomorrow is going to be interesting. I wonder how Issei will react to the fried chicken. Mwahahahahahah. Naruto. Go to bed. The screams of Bova echoed through the house. Naruto rolled over with a smile on his face. He loved his life. Naruto was currently watching Issei and Kiba arrive to the old school building after school. He had arrived earlier, skipping his last class because of his excitement. He was planning on sitting in on the meeting as well, and as a high-class devil it was imperative he had his queen with him. Riser didn't know about Valerie. As a matter of fact, no one outside of the Citris, Gremories, and Satans knew about her. They didn't want the fact that a young devil had a servant with a Longinus, let alone one of the three holy relics, to be released to the public. Not only would it make Valerie a target, but it would also anger the church. But in case of a leak, Naruto had proceeded to get Valerie to learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as a way to protect herself. While he himself preferred a more Asian-style martial art like karate, he figured Jiu-Jitsu would be better since it was better for ground fighting, since the only time he expected Valerie to fight was if she was either chased, or someone got past her magic. Valerie was currently in the clubroom with Akeno and Rias preparing for the meeting. She was in a skirt that stopped mid-thigh, with a cloak that started from her waist and ended below her knees, with a top piece that covered only her shoulders. On her arms and legs were sleeves that donned the Citri family crest, and she had on combat boots, Asuna's Knights of the Blood Oath uniform, with the Citri crest instead of the cross. He got the idea from his favorite anime, Sword Art Online. He removed the cross and added his family crest. He liked the way it showed her figure that seemed to have the beauty of both human and vampire, and she thought it looked good too. He got up when he noticed the last of Ria's peerage, sans Gasper, was in the room. He arrived just in time to see an annoyed Grafia holding a fan over a groaning Issei. Not taking long to realize what had happened, he quickly got in Issei's face. The girls were surprised by this actions. Had Naruto grown that protective of Grafia? Hey, the only people allowed to ogle Gray-chan is me and Ni-sama. The girl's sweat dropped and Grafia eyebrow twitched. Naruto yelped when he felt the fan make contact with the back of his skull. He sent a questioning look towards Grafia. What was that for Gray-chan? He was hit again. Must I remind you, Naruto-sama, to act as a high-class devil, and that I'm a married woman? Rias could only sigh. Every time they met it was like this. She reprimanded him for calling her Gray-chan and hitting on her. But he made it his personal mission to replace Searsex. You should behave, before I ask Sona-sama to give you extra lessons in etiquette. He quickly shot up and ran behind Rias, pointing at Grafia. You wouldn't dare. His words were spoken with true fear lacing them, as if he was given a fate worse than death, which for him it was. Make it known Naruto never has and never will like school. Their back and forth could not continue as Rias started pinching on Naruto's cheek, making him wince in pain. Now Naruto, if you are done with your banter, we can get down to the problem at hand. Rias spoke with a stern voice that sent shivers up Naruto's spine. Naruto sat straight up and still like a doll, surprising Issei that his bucko could control another devil. Just goes to show how awesome she was. Bucko, did you say problem? Issei responded, leading to Rias going silent, as if trying to find the right words. Grafia stepped up and looked at Rias. Oju-sama, would you like me to explain the situation? Rias looked at her and shook her head, not even contemplating the offer of the silver-haired maid. She gathered her thoughts and opened her mouth to speak but was cut off by the light of a magical circle. Issei and Asia looked plain confused while the others tensed slightly. Naruto and Rias looked annoyed while Grafia still had on the poker face. Valerie and Akano were in the kitchen and finishing the tea if the rattling coming from the kitchen were anything to go by. When the light died down, Riser Phoenix stood there in all his doucheness. It was honestly depression to Naruto to see an arrogant man like him. Issei on the other hand was in a little awe. Phew, it's been a while since I came to the humans' world. The guy looks around the room, and then smirks after finding Bucko. My lovely Rias, I came to see you. He sent a distasteful look towards Naruto, then looked back to Rias. Now then, Rias, let's go and take a look at the ceremony hall. The date of the ceremony is decided, so we need to check it before then. He went to grab Rias' arm, but Naruto was suddenly between the two of them with a smirk on his face. Era Riser-kun, I must say I don't like guys, see, you will have to take my rejection. When you go back, tell Lady Phoenix I say, what's up? Naruto spoke in a cheeky tone that seemed to piss off this Riser, but he breathed in before turning away towards a giggling Rias. Rias, come, let's go. He spoke in a commanding tone that set off red flags for Issei. After an uninterested response by Riser, Issei looked as though his ego had been destroyed. Oh yeah, well, who are you? Issei spoke in an angry voice. Rias, you didn't tell them about me? That's mean. Hyodo Issei-sama. Why yes, this person is Razor Phoenix-sama. He's a pure-blood high-class devil, and the third son of the House of Phoenix. Grafia-san explains in her usual monotone voice. And he is the husband of the next heiress of the House of Gremory. He is engaged to Oju-sama. Issei really did deflate. His body floated to the ground like a piece of paper picked up in the wind. This guy, marrying Bucko. Now I have to get past him and Naruto. How could I do that? No, I can't think like that. I will touch those oppai. And with that he immediately inflated with a perverted leer on his face. As the others watched Issei get his emotions together, Valerie and Akano came out with the tea. Rias sits on the couch near the edge while Naruto sat at Rias' usual seat. Riser sat next to Rias and was constantly grabbing her shoulder. Issei was shocked that Naruto sat back and acted calm. He nearly jumped on the guy, but a firm hand by Kaneko kept him from jumping out. Valerie only gave tea to the servants and Naruto before taking a position behind Naruto, Riser's eyes following her until they refocused on Akano. Everything about this guy spoke harassment, like he was gonna say something dumb like, grab him by the... But Naruto never glared or challenged Riser, and it was killing Issei. Riser's eyes focused on Valerie after the tea had been served and Akeno went to the kitchen to prepare more tea, just in case. Valerie took the stare until it slipped low and it was the only place he was looking. She squirmed a little and Naruto noticed his queen's distress. He leveled Riser with a firm glare. Riser-kun, if you appreciate those eyes you will stop staring at my queen, Phoenix or not. Riser recoiled a little at Naruto's voice and gaze. Riser returned with one of his own. This is your queen. I wonder is she weak? Riser spoke in a voice so haughty Naruto almost laughed at his questions. Is his queen strong? She holds a damn Longinus, and she can gain the abilities of those she sucks the blood from. She must be. A strong queen and weak king don't go together. Naruto looks amused and Valerie a little nervous. The attention was on her. Naruto added a smirk which all in the room except Riser had seen before. Valerie, are you thirsty? Naruto played with his collar giving her a look. Riser, Asia, and Issei thought this was a harmful action but the others knew what he was doing. And he said he didn't like gloating. Valerie started blushing at seeing his neck and unconsciously started dropping her jaw showing her fangs a little. No thank you Naruto. Naruto grabbed her arm and looked her dead in the eye. Nonsense, no need to be shy, you can have a drink whenever. He looked back at Riser and tilted his head, creeping him out. But before Riser or Issei could bring up their questions Valerie began drinking from Naruto's neck. Asia and Riser discovered her pieces right there, but Issei was a little on the slow side. A vampire. Riser spoke in shock. Almost all devils would love to get their hands on a vampire. It was especially true since vampires threw out almost all children with even an ounce of human blood. Naruto inwardly smirked. That will teach you not to doubt my queen. Valerie, sigh. Drink however much you want. She told him his blood was delicious, like a sweet flavor, but he never understood it. When she started she wouldn't stop drinking for a few minutes. Stop it already. Riser, I told you before, I will not marry you. Suddenly Rias explodes on Riser. But Riser tried to explain the situation with logic but was nowhere near convincing Rias. Grafia was still just standing by, and Naruto was tensing. Riser made no attempt to stop. And knowing Riser it was only a minute before the situation got out of hand. But I won't marry you, Riser. I will marry the one I acknowledge. Even the devils from the old noble house have the right to choose. Rias looks toward Naruto briefly. Seeing that, Riser suddenly becomes enraged. His eyes become sharper and he even makes a noise with his tongue. You know, Rias, I'm also a devil who carries the name of House of Phoenix behind me. I can't let that name get tarnished. I didn't even want to come to a small old building like this in the human world. Rather, I don't like the human world that much. The fire and wind of this world is filthy. For a devil like me who rules fire and wind, I can't stand it. Fire erupts from Riser's body. The temperature rises so high that some of the lesser devils were struggling to breathe. I will take you back to the underworld. Even if I have to burn all of your peerage. Naruto simply rolled his eyes at the show of force. He let out a bit of his powers to make the room bearable for Asia and Issei who were struggling to breathe. Oju-sama, Riser-sama, please calm down. If both of you were to continue, then I won't be quiet about it. For Searzek-sama's honor, I won't hold back. Rias and Riser both paled at Grafia's voice that cut through the intense atmosphere like a knife through butter. Riser calms the flames around his body and sighs while shaking his head. To be told that by the strongest queen, even I would be scared. I definitely wouldn't want to fight the people from Searzek-sama's group, which is known to be made up of monsters. Naruto snickers before cupping his hands over his mouth. She just pimped you. Riser almost lost his cool again while a subtle twitch could be seen on Grafia's brow. Naruto proceeded to skip out on the next part as he already had an idea of what it would be, a challenge between Rias and Riser for her freedom. He couldn't care less about the details, so he was waiting for this part to be over. Grafia confirmed the rating game. Naruto looked at Riser with a smirk. He knew what would happen. Riser was going to get all Y on them. It really amused and disgusted Naruto at the same time. The moment Grafia finished her bow Riser proceeded with being. Riser. Hey, Rias, would the ones here be your servants? Riser asked in a Y voice that amused Naruto. He gestured to the couch with all the members of Ria's peerage on it. Yesen? Riser snapped his fingers, bringing his peerage out. The 15 girls stepped out of the light. As they looked around the room, the first thing they noticed was the crying mess known as Issei. Naruto watched on in disgust as Riser kissed his girls and gloated to Issei. He sent a victorious smirk towards Naruto, who raised an eyebrow at the action. Riser seemingly got smugger as Naruto made no move and the smirk got wider. Issei suddenly activated his boosted gear and pointed at Riser in anger. A womanizer like you isn't good enough to be with Bucko. Huh? Weren't you looking up to the so-called womanizer? Issei looked guilty but determined after Riser gave his response. Shut up. That's different with the thing about Bucko. Naruto had to groan. He had the feeling he would have to set Issei up with someone else at this rate, or he would be in this strange place with Rias. Heroes love women. That's a saying in the human world, right? A good phrase indeed. But this is just a close relationship with my servants. Aren't you also adored by Rias? Issei looked conflicted. He was right. Naruto was laughing at their back and forth. Hero my ass. You are just a bird guy. Firebird Phoenix? Ha ha ha. That's the same as Yakitori. Issei's provocation seemed to work as Riser's face shifted to pure fury. Yakitori, why you low-class devil? Don't get ahead of yourself. That's not the way you talk to a high-class devil. Rias, what's going on with your discipline towards your servants? Rias rolled her eyes and looked towards Akano. Riser's fury starts to rise more as Issei continues his taunting. Ma, Riser, let's just calm down. Naruto tried to step in before Issei embarrassed himself, but it didn't work. The taunting went back and forth. In the end he settled for a sigh. Issei suddenly got in a battle stance. Mira, do it. Riser looked as his servant knocked Issei out of it with one hit of her staff. You have an invincible sacred gear, but are weak with it. Riser paused for opment as if gathering his thoughts. But the match would be interesting if you were to get used to it. Riser put his hand on his chin, and it seems like he thought of something. Rias, how about we have a match in 10 days? We could do it now, but that wouldn't be interesting. Are you giving me a handicap? Are you against it? Is it humiliating? A rating game isn't something simple that you can win with only your feelings. If you can't use your servant's power to the fullest, then you will lose immediately. So it's not weird for you to train with your servants for your first rating game. I have seen devils who lost without using their power to the fullest countless of times, no matter how great their potential and power was. Rias doesn't complain and listened quietly to what Riser said. Riser directs his palm towards the ground, and a magic circle starts to glow. 10 days. If it's you, then you should be able to improve your servants. He then looks at Issei. Don't be a disgrace to Rias, Rias's pawn. Your blow is Rias's blow. With that, Riser left the room and Naruto rolled over in laughter. Nothing like some fried chicken to make your day. Naruto looks over towards the peerage of Riser that were about to teleport away. Revel-chan, can you come here for a moment? The girl with drills steps off the magic circle with a blush on her face. I told you not to call me Chan, Naruto-sama. She seemed to get really mad. No, you told me not to call you Drill-chan, not Revel-chan. Besides, I told you not to call me Sama. Naruto looks over at Issei and Asia. Now children, he spoke in a chiding tone. Don't be mean, say hi to the nice Phoenix. The name Phoenix seemed to throw red flags for Issei, but Asia went straight over and bowed at the devil. Issei, what are you doing? Riser is the only asshole in that peerage. The girls just happen to be loyal, and Revel is a Tsunere. Revel blushed at Naruto's classification and Issei gained a lewd expression. What is it you want, Naruto-sama? Naruto crouched in the corner with a gloomy expression. Naruto-sama, it's almost like she actually hates me. Everyone had to sweat drop. Naruto is spending too much time with Searsex. Naruto-sama? She spoke each syllable in a hesitant voice. His emotions greatly confused everyone. Revel-chan. He grabbed her by the shoulders and looked her in the eyes. You need a boyfriend, how about Issei? He's single, has almost no appeal, and he wants a harem. Think about it, you and Asia over there, harem sisters. Actually, that would be a good TV show. Naruto grabbed Valerie and started a magic circle. Come on Valerie, we're going to see Ka-tan. And with that he teleported away, leaving two red-faced bishops, a red-faced pawn, a giggling queen, and king, and a silent rook. What do you mean I'm the weakest devil you've ever seen? Issei was angry. Naruto was listing his faults in an attempt to train him. Issei was able to take it, but Naruto called him the weakest devil ever. It was the worst thing anyone ever said to him. It angered him. But what made it worst was it was probably true. You heard me. Even Asia is stronger. If I put you in a fight and she actually fought, you would be destroyed. She is better in magic, support, and defense. Right now, you haven't even talked to your sacred gear. Issei looked confused. Don't tell me you haven't talked to Diedrich, the Welsh dragon, that is sealed in your arm, since your dream. Issei still looked confused. What do you mean sealed in my arm? Issei's eyes lit up in recognition, before disbelief. You mean it was in my arm? Ha 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 ha. This is priceless. Who did you think is giving you your power when you boost? Naruto was getting a laugh out of this, but the tone in his voice was like one talking to a child. It made Issei feel as though he was a little brother. Naruto calmed himself and his face relaxed. Issei took this as a time to respond. I thought all sacred gears came from God. Issei gained a confused yet thoughtful look. He always assumed that God distributed his powers to the sacred gears. But you're a devil. God is your sworn enemy. Why would he help you? Also, there's thousands, if not millions of twice criticals. So are you saying God boost those too? Don't make me laugh. But instead of laughing at you, I should probably fix your issues. Naruto gained a thoughtful look. You have no stamina, speed, power, magical skills, sacred gear skill, or drive. Naruto mumbled to himself, but he was still loud enough for Issei to hear. I know. For your training you will do an exercise. This should be able to increase your skills all at once. Out of me, So Tan, and Rias, I'm the best with barriers. I'm also good with illusions. Naruto then pushed Issei away from him. Issei, this training is simple. Over there, he pointed a few feet to their right. In a previously empty spot a shower appeared. Is your target? I will put a cage of solid ice around the shower. Your job is to break through the ice. Issei looked as though he was about to refuse to take part in this regimen. But before he could denounce the training, Rias walked over in nothing but a towel. She walked towards the ice, which melted and allowed her to get in the shower, and then reformed. The reformed ice grew opaque and Issei heard the shower cut on. Issei, would you help me clean my breast? Rias spoke through the ice that was covering her form. While the voice would have been read as false due to the extremity of the situation, Issei was a giant pervert. As a pervert he ran on his fetish, and that word, breast, made him want to see the other side of ice. He immediately gained a lewd expression before running and attempting to punch the wall. When his fist hit the ice he immediately started thrashing in pain. He glared at a smirking Naruto, and was about to yell at him when the ice wall sprouted a hand that punched him, making him fly away 20 feet. He flew into another ice wall as hard as cement. Now if I may finish. Cue glare from Issei. This is a simple exercise. Your target is the bath. If you get there you will get to help Rias shower. If not I will. The ice surrounding it is as hard as 20 feet of iron. It was a lie. It was only as thick as a few ice cubes. But if Issei did manage to break it he would have a morale boost. The ice will attack you if you stay within 5 feet of it for more than 10 seconds. When you aren't in those 5 feet, I'll attack you. Issei paled when Naruto started exerting his pressure. Mwahahahahaha. Rias has left you in my care for 6 days, 4 before the rating game. You will get 2 breaks, for breakfast and dinner, but other than that, just don't stop moving around. And with that he kicked off and went after Issei. Time skip 10 hours later, 8:30 p.m., day 1. Issei was currently resting. It was currently his dinner period. A Kano came with the plate for food and some tea. Naruto honestly expected Asia. A Kano gave Issei and Naruto their food and drink before seating next to Naruto, who had his back turned to Issei. To Issei it was a harmless gesture, but if he looked closer he would see the moving of their jaws. Naruto, Rias asked that you don't harm Issei too bad. She would like to continue his magic training after this, but she can't if he's too tired. A Kano spoke in a hushed tone too low for Issei to hear. I can't make any promises. If she wants his training complete it will have to be done my way. If he can't take it, then he shouldn't have been sent to me at all. She looked ready to retort, but the look on Naruto's face showed he was not backing down. Tell her that I'll add in a night break so he can sleep. That should be enough for him to practice magic. I'll tell her, Naruto-kun. Akano flashed a smile but was met with a stoic face from Naruto. She got up and collected the plates and cups before leaving. Akano, breakfast is 8:30. She nodded and continued walking off. Now pervert break time's over. Time skip 5 days later, day 6. Beep beep. The sound of an alarm ringing sounded through the field. Issei could not hear due to his screams, but Naruto heard it clearly and smirked. Issei-kun, you only have 10 minutes. If you don't hurry, I'll have to help Rias bathe. Issei couldn't even get to the ice earlier in their training. He was too busy trying to run from Naruto. The one time he got close enough, a dragon tail made from ice appeared on the cage and he unconsciously hesitated and he was thrown by the ice. Issei, where are you? My boobs need to be cleaned. With those words, Issei shot up like a rocket. He gained a determined look. Any signs of fatigue disappeared and he brought out his sacred gear. He shot towards the cage of ice and winded his arm back. He struck the ice and watched as a crack formed. It was thin but it was still present. When he was about to punch again, he was flung by a rope of ice. When he landed, he was forced to duck a spear of ice being thrown at him. He bent his knees and launched at the ice, but before he hit the spot he cracked earlier, his ankle was grabbed and he was thrown. He heard an alarm going off. Naruto-kun, can you come wash my chest for me? Issei took too long. Issei broke in tears and watched as the ice and Rias was destroyed in a ball of destruction. He saw a furious-looking Rias standing there with a twitching eyebrow. Naruto, is there a reason you used me for this demonstration? Rias looked furious. Naruto began sweating and backed away slowly from the fuming redhead. Usually guys don't want the girl they like to been seen naked by another man. But I've seen a lot of girls naked, including Graphia. The twitching of her eyebrow and her power increased. I mean, you're the most beautiful girl I know? The pressure increased before disappearing altogether. Good choice in words. Rias walked over and grabbed the dazed and exhausted Issei before walking away. So, what is his power level now? Rias, Naruto, Valerie, and Akano were sitting in a room drinking tea. It was the day before the raiding game. They spent the day touching up on strategies for the game. Tomorrow would be used for mental and physical rest in preparedness for the game. As you know, I did the Mirage training. To say he struggled was an understatement. His speed was low, and his power was tremendously low. I would have at least expected one of his arms to be acceptable. But Issei was able to fracture the ice. It was a hairline fracture but fractured nonetheless. If I had to put him anywhere, it would be a mid-low class. He was still extremely weak. All of Ria's other pieces were mid-class in their areas of expertise. Issei was exponentially stronger than he was before, but 2 cubed was only 8. If Issei was 8, Riser was 64. He couldn't hope to do any damage to Riser unless he sold his arm to the dragon inside of him and hit him with a bottle of holy water. But knowing him, that's probably first on his to-do list, unless he hasn't made some perverted magical spell yet. It wasn't a lie. Issei might have gotten stronger, but it was not much since he only had 6 days. If he had a month instead, Issei might have been able to grow, but he didn't have that kind of time. But hey, he had fun. Got to play a few pranks too. He gave Issei breakfast, dinner, and 4 hours a night to sleep. Each break a new prank was set up. But it helped Issei's situation awareness technically, so one could say he was still doing his job. You're welcome to stay with us the last 2 days. Rias and Akano got up and left the room, leaving just Naruto and Valerie. Valerie-chan, you felt Riser's power, right? A nod was his answer. Do you think they can win? Valerie went into a thinking pose. She knew about the Phoenix from her time with the vampires and a little bit more after becoming Naruto's queen. She felt Riser's power and knew Rias from a previous spar. She pursed her lips. If I had to say, no. Naruto frowned at her answer but allowed her to finish. While they are all strong, Riser has quantity. His pieces might not be as strong as Rias, but he can dwindle their stamina. Not only that, but Riser is a little stronger than Rias, so she might not be able to win unless Akano is still able to fight with her when she needs to fight Riser. He nodded at her assessment. He could not find any fault in her explanation. So I probably will have to fight him. It was not bad but not good. He wanted to let Rias handle this and not show any moves. Now he might have to think of something new before he had to fight Cyroorg again. Though I am thinking about showing off my queen. He wiggled his eyebrows, suggestively eliciting a blush from Valerie. What does that mean? She couldn't help but stammer. He inwardly smirked at her reaction and decided to continue. He leaned in closer until his face was only a few inches from hers, making her blush more heavily, and unconsciously lean in. "It means I want to show others my beautiful queen." She was really blushing. He moved closer to where they were almost touching. He suddenly shifted his head and blew air in her eye before running off giggling. "Maybe in the future, my queen, but for now you have to wait." He added emphasis on the word queen. He laughed even harder. "It's my loss. I resign." Ria's voice echoed through the TV. This was the rating game. Naruto was watching it live. Him and Sona were just sitting in silence for a minute. The match was close. The beginning played out as it was supposed to. If she had another piece or two, she might have won. They defeated the pieces in the gym and were moving only for the queen to make her move. The deciding factor was Akino's defeat. If the Bomb Queen would have retired, Asia could have healed Akino and the final battle would have probably been different. Issei was noticeably better in all aspects since Akino helped him in magic during the last 2 days. Rias, after the defeat of Akino, decided to fight Riser. Issei foolishly attacked one-on-one and was threatened. Rias couldn't sit by and let her pawn be killed, so she resigned. Though they probably should have told Issei that Rias had one more chance. After all, Naruto wasn't gonna let Riser marry Rias. It was like how he beat the crap out of the person who was engaged to Sona, made him accept her chess challenge. "So, looks like you will have to make the challenge for her hand?" It was more of a statement than a question. She gave it her best, but she was not strong enough. No, she was strong enough, and her plan was good. But her plan was not good enough. She left some major flaws. The beginning was good, but she was ill-prepared for the Bomb Queen and the Phoenix Tears. Not only that, but Issei fought with his emotions and not his brain. "I'm gonna have to beat it out of him." He gained an evil glint in his eye that seemed to make Sona shiver a little. Akino is rubbing off on him. Sona could only hope her assumption was wrong. "So, you're gonna reveal Valerie?" "I've been thinking about it for some time. Ka-tan and Nisama have given their approval, but I have to ask Valerie-chan. It will be her who will have the spotlight on her. Bova already thinks we should present her. Hopefully I won't get too many trade offers if we go through with it." He looked towards the screen as they did a close-up of a smirking Riser. "Valerie-chan, I have been given the option of introducing you to the underworld. But I have decided to let you decide." She looked surprised but calmed as she looked at his face. She looked ready to speak but was met with a hand by Naruto. "If I tell the public who you are, the church will probably after you, as will the fallen angels. They will come for you not just because of your sacred gear. You're the queen of a high-class devil, who is also the son of a Satan. If we do this, you will have a target as big as the Satans." The look in Naruto's eye showed the severity of the situation. "I'm not sure." She began to mutter a little low. "I'm not as strong as you, let alone the Satans. What if they came for me? What if the Teps faction find out about me? They forced me to use it." I could hear the voices. "They went away, but what if they come back?" Naruto could hear the fear in her voice as she spoke of her old home. It was as if she went cold in her bones. It made Naruto sad to see her in such a stare. Naruto hugged her. He squeezed to reassure her before his reply. "If they come for you, they'll have to go through me and Bova, and I know Gasper will give them hell to pay too." He spoke in a confident voice that made a warmth stir inside of her. "As long as I'm around, no one will get you. If I get any trade proposals, I'll throw them away and won't give those old coots the satisfaction of me looking at them." He let her go and flashed her a smile. "With me here, you'll never have to worry about anyone trying to harm you." He gave her a thumbs up and continued to smile. He was caught off guard when she hugged him but got over it quickly before hugging back. She pulled back and looked him in the eyes. "I'll do it." He smiled back. It was a well-known fact that the son of Seraphal Leviathan, Naruto Citri, was unofficially courting Rias Gremory. The only reason they weren't officially engaged was that Lord Gremory made the Phoenix marriage contract years before either's birth. If Lord Gremory knew Seraphal would have a child, he probably wouldn't have made the contract. He assumed that since the old Satan faction was still launching guerrilla attacks occasionally, she wouldn't have a child anytime soon. The death of Minato Namikaze was considered a stain in the history of the underworld. It was because of the attack that the birth of Milica's Gremory was left a secret until Graphia was back at 100% after birth. The only ones that knew if Graphia's pregnancy was the Gremorys, Citris, and Satans. But Naruto's birth meant that the boy and the Gremory heir had a high chance of falling in love. The two families were close. When the rating game between Rias and Riser went in Riser's favor, everyone knew a challenge for Rias' hand would be made. Knowing that this played on Riser's pride, everyone knew the challenge would be accepted. So here they were. They were in the ballroom of the Gremory castle. If Riser won, this would be a wedding. If Naruto won, this would be an engagement party. So right now the adults were putting in bets. The odds were in Riser's favor. Riser was seen as older and more experienced of he two. Even with the fact Naruto was the Leviathan's son, Riser was more experienced and had the Phoenix bloodline. The only thing the people knew was there was a challenge. No one knew whether it was a rating game or one-on-one battle. The people wanted a rating game because Naruto's queen was a mystery. But they knew it was most likely a one-on-one battle. They watched as Riser entered the ballroom with his queen behind him, in their usual outfits. On the other side, Naruto appeared with his queen in tow. They looked at her in awe. She looked around 19 or 20 and was very beautiful. Whilst Naruto was in his Sage of Six Paths kimono, his queen wore her Asuna outfit. In the middle, Sirzex stood with Graphia behind him. When they made it to the middle, Sirzex began his introduction. Welcome, devils of the underworld. Today is the day of the challenge between Naruto Citri and Riser Phoenix for the hand of Rias Gremory. We will now set the rules. With that, Sirzex looked at the two boys glare at each other. The air around Naruto was cold, while the air around Riser was hot. Everyone felt no change with the temperature offsetting. The choices are a full rating game or king versus king battle. Riser-kun, your choice? It does not matter. I will not lose, so it does not matter. He spoke with his nose up in a Y tone. Lord and Lady Phoenix sighed. Naruto-kun? All eyes turned to Naruto. He looked unfazed by their curious faces. I don't have enough time for a rating game as I have school, plus I don't need Valerie-chan to fight Riser, so one-on-one. Sirzex looked back to Riser, who had the power to overturn, seeing as he was defending in this challenge. He looked as if he was going to talk, so Sirzex sat back. Scared to have your queen fight? The look Naruto and Sirzex had told him the taunt would backfire. No, but why would I need an experienced Longinus user to take you down? Gasp could be heard around the room. Riser looked shocked. Sirzex smirked as he looked at each face, while Seraphol growled at the greedy faces in the crowd. The attention was on Valerie, who looked nervous, understandably. Era, did I forget to introduce my cute queen? Allow me to introduce her then. Meet Valerie Tepes, Dampier and wielder of the Longinus Sephiroth Grawl. To say Naruto was amused was an understatement. If it wasn't for the fact he had to uphold his image, he would have laughed and probably rolling in the ground trying to catch his breath. The faces of the older devils was funny. Rias, who was in the corner, really was laughing. She was with just a Kano, as the newer members in the peerage was still recovering from the rating game and Kiba and Kaneko were still injured. Sirzex, wanting to get this over with, quickly confirmed all the rules and sent the two to the arena they would fight in. It would be a one-on-one fight with no items allowed. The two chose a basic rule set. The arena was simple. It was a giant valley, a waterfall in the background, with a little pond and a couple of bushes. The two stood and waited. When the bell to begin rang, Naruto watched as Riser opened his mouth. Why not stop this fight, little Citri? You use ice, I use fire, that's my advantage, and with my Phoenix blood you have no chance. Riser spoke while lighting his wings in a show of force. Naruto did not bat an eye and calmly released his pressure. You know you shouldn't get why during a fight. Besides, a giant pillar of water shot up, surprising Riser. If you didn't forget, as Citris prefer water. The pillar collapsed on Riser before freezing, leaving just his head out. Also, my ice is the ice of the Leviathan, so don't underestimate it. Riser seemed to be angered and his powers rose. The ice was melted and he landed on the ground. He sent a ball of fire only for the melted ice to rise as water and snuffed out the fireball. Riser ran forward with his fist on fire. As he swung, Naruto ducked and flipped around his fist. Naruto returned a fist, and when it hit Riser's shoulder, ice encased the spot that was hit. Riser let out a growl and blew the ice off. He charged at Naruto and hit him with a fist shrouded in flames. He continued his punches. He backed off for a minute, expecting to knock out Naruto. When the smoke settled, there was no Naruto. All that was in his place was broken shards of ice. Riser in a fit of rage launched wave after wave of flames into the surrounding area. Come on out, Ice Boy. The longer you delay this, the more embarrassed you will be. At the end of his rant, he released his wings. He took to the air and looked around for his missing opponent. He began shooting random fireballs towards random bushes and rocks in the surrounding area. Riser growled in frustration and raised his power. Riser flew around the board until he was directly over the pond. Water shot out in tentacles attempting to grab the phoenix, who twisted in the air in order to dodge. He threw a ball of fire at the tentacle, causing it to disperse. When the water fell back into the pond, Riser felt something impact the back of his head, sending him to the ground. He seemed to have broken his legs and a few ribs, but they were back to normal in a few seconds. Riser got up and let out frustrated growl. As he looked around, all he saw was a white blur and his stomach was impaled with a spear of ice. Riser pulled it out and let his regeneration kick in. You should know by now that you can't harm a phoenix. He spoke angrily and his powers rose in a fit of irritation. Naruto suddenly appeared to his left, then another to his right. Riser launched balls of fire out, melting them both, showing they were ice. You see, you can't beat me, your ice is useless and my body regenerates. You can't win. More Narutos were popping up and Riser continued to melt them. When he saw one didn't melt, he let out a laugh. Finally giving up? Naruto settled for a glare. Riser didn't look fazed and continued talking. Give up now and I'll let you remain for the wedding. Naruto didn't answer, just raised his powers, cooling the air. Give up now and I'll let you remain with Rias, queen, but not until I'm done with her. Naruto's power rose even more, but he still did not move. The people at the party were wondering what his plan was. Riser's power started to rise even more. Give up now and I might let you watch on our honeymoon. Naruto still didn't respond. The air continued to grow colder. Riser was about to speak again, but his wings went out. He attempted to light them again, but they wouldn't. Riser glared at the smirking Naruto. What did you do? Naruto started to run forward. When he reached Riser, he ate his fist back and coated it in water. As he ran, he spoke. Funny thing about fire. It runs on oxygen, so if the oxygen is frozen, the fire won't light. He brought the fist up and hit Riser, making it freeze on contact before pulling back the other and continuing pummeling Riser. This is for forcing Rias into marriage. This is for attempting to kill the pervert. This is for all you have said about my friends. And this is for being an asshole. Naruto continued, eventually deforming his face. He continued attacking at blinding speeds, causing damage as fast as he regenerated. Naruto brought both his hands up and formed a giant hammer made from ice. He brought it down on Riser's chest and the ice chip. The shards that chipped off started to spread over Riser, freezing him. Naruto walked back and watched as Riser couldn't get out because he couldn't light a fire. You're finished? That ice sucks your demonic power out. Maybe next time you shouldn't underestimate someone with an elemental advantage, or a son of a Satan. Naruto turned around as Graphia announced his victory. Naruto appeared in a room not too far from the ballroom. He walked the hallway that to the ballroom. When he arrived, the devils assembled clapped for him. Rias immediately started running towards him and Akano was walking behind her. When Rias was a few feet from him, he disappeared. Rias was confused until she heard the usual era from Akano. She turned and was met with the scene of Naruto on one knee in front of Akano, kissing her hand. She gained a tick mark. My sweet Akano, now you are free. We can finally do what was fated. He spoke dramatically as Akano placed her free hand on her cheek and started blushing. Those who knew the longest sweat dropped, with the collective thought. I thought he said he would stop flirting with Akano in front of Rias. They all inwardly shivered, remembering the damage the two caused. After 5 minutes of the girls arguing, Naruto accidentally got hit by a wayward spell, which led to Mama Leviathan coming out. The devil heads and heirs just sighed and left. It was always weird with the Gremories. It had been a few days after the Riser incident and things were returning to normal. Rias had become a bit clingier towards Naruto, though he didn't notice. Akano did and pushed back, so to say. Somehow Naruto even managed to not notice that their love triangle somehow was made into a 7-act play by the school drama club, which apparently was in production since their second years. Sona nearly had to shut it down after a riot at the ticket sales. Every student wanted to see the play, mainly the girls. Girlfriends dragged boyfriends, and those in relationships got in arguments with those that weren't over the tickets. It was a good thing magic could be used for crowd control. This is not that bad of a play. Naruto had to think to himself. On his left was Rias and to the right was Akano. The play started off with their childhood, with several dramatic moments, most were false. The story follows a handsome prince, aka Naruto, meeting two girls, a princess, Rias, and a maid, Akano, as the three grow older. When the story got to their teenage years, it created an evil tyrant, Sona, trying to prevent the union of any of the three. Sona left the moment she found out she would be the antagonist of the story, much to the others' amusement. When the play ended, everyone stood up and clapped. Naruto was in the shower. He had about 2 hours before school started. He usually got up this early to shower, cook, then go for a short stroll, ending up in a cafe. He was so into his shower he didn't realize the door was open or that someone was moving towards the shower. The curtain was suddenly opened and Naruto turned towards the offender. His fright getting the better of him, the water from his shower was pushed up instead of down due to his magic. He was met with the crimson red hair of Rias. She jumped in and before he could say anything grabbed him from behind. "Nay Rias, what are you doing?" Naruto asked a little hesitantly. "I'm just showering," she spoke in a matter-of-fact tone. Naruto deadpanned. "You were obviously waiting for me to shower. You were spying on me, weren't you?" Rias turned her head with a tint of red lacing her cheeks. "Who complains about having a beautiful girl in the shower with them?" Rias' voice had annoyance lacing it. Naruto said nothing as he continued to wash his body. When he moved to wash his back, he was surprised when he felt the fleshy orbs hit his back. Rias? Just let me wash your back." Naruto said nothing as he allowed Rias to clean off his back. "Thank you, Naruto-kun." He heard Rias speak in a voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for what? You freed me. Even though I knew you could beat Riser, there was a part of me that still felt like it was hopeless." Naruto just sat in silence as he listened to Rias' fears. "But you reaffirmed my hopes and fulfilled my dreams." Naruto felt something on his cheek and knew it was Rias' lips. He turned his head and was met with a kiss on the lips. When Naruto turned around fully, he heard laughing. He turned to see a fully clothed Akano holding 2 pairs of clothing. Era, so bold Rias. Naruto-sama, I never imagined you would finally take the initiative." The girl spoke in a tone mixed with jealousy and teasing. "Akano? She jumped in my bath, meaning she took the initiative." Naruto spoke with a calm tone but on the inside was blushing up a storm. "Remember, you don't blush, you don't blush." "I see. Well, Naruto-sama, I'll collect Rias and go. Your clothes are laid out on your bed, already ironed, your breakfast is on the stove, and your lunch is on the 3rd shelf in the fridge." With that, Akano grabbed Rias and the two teleported out. "Did she just do all my chores before school?" Naruto mumbled to himself, a little annoyed he had nothing to do for an hour. About 5 minutes later, we see a refreshed Naruto heading to his kitchen to get his meal. He was going to eat very slowly. His whole morning routine was disrupted by Akano. He was thankful though. When he reached the kitchen, he was surprised to find Akano waiting for him. "Akano? I thought you left." Naruto was sweating a little. He didn't sense her at all. If she was trying to do harm to him, he would have been caught off guard. "What are you doing here?" Era surprised Naruto-sama. "I came here to feed you, of course." She spoke as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. Naruto sat down at the table hesitantly, not believing that was her only reason for being in the house. "Say tilde." Akano fed him the whole plate of breakfast before placing it in the sink. When Naruto moved to get up, he was surprised when she sat on his lap. "We still have over an hour until school. How about you let me show my thanks for freeing Rias, Naruto-sama?" Akano spoke in a sultry tone, sending shivers up Naruto's spine. Naruto responded by keeping himself calm as he spoke. "You don't need to call me Sama, you know? But you've earned the Sama. I'll be happy to call you that in another setting." Naruto could only sweat drop. "Besides, it's not as if this is the first time you saved me." Akano spoke in a whisper but didn't go on. The two stayed that way for a few minutes. It was after school in the student council room. Naruto, Sona, and Tsubaki were working on their respective duties and discussing matters concerning the underworld. The door opened and Saji came in with some paperwork. He paled when he saw Naruto and started shivering. Sona noticed and lifted an eyebrow. "Saji, what's the matter?" Sona with her back to Naruto missed the glint in his eyes as they bore into Saji's eyes. But it was seen by Tsubaki, who made a mental note of it. Nothing happened, Kaichu, Naruto mouthed to the nervous-looking Saji. Nothing, Kaichu. The glint in Naruto's eye seemed to get brighter before Saji excused himself. Naruto-sama, what was that? Tsubaki looked ever serious as she brought Sona's attention to the matter. Nothing, Naruto quickly replied while making himself as small as possible while darting his eyes and Sona and the wall. What are you talking about? Sona's confusion was understandable as she didn't notice the glint Naruto had in his eye when he saw Saji. Nothing, so Tan, let's go back to lunch. Naruto seemed panicked, like he was keeping a dirty little secret. This made Sona even more interested. It wasn't every day Naruto tried to keep something from her. Kaichu. When Saji came in, Naruto and him seemed to have a silent conversation, that made Saji get scared and nervous. Tsubaki calmly explained while Naruto started sweating. Sona raised an eyebrow and looked at Naruto expectantly. As with anyone with an Ant-Con mindset, he broke and breathed in. Saji may or may not have seen me introduce myself to Issei. The girls looked confused. Most people could deal with seeing the prank. It was usually those that went through it that became scared of Naruto, well, except Akano. That's not all of it, is it? Tsubaki spoke in a knowing tone, causing Naruto to glare at her. I may or may not have also threatened to reintroduce myself to Saji if he did a certain thing. Naruto spoke in a proud tone, that was still fearful underneath. What was this certain thing you threatened him about? Sona asked, her curiosity still piqued. Naruto bored into her eyes for a minute but didn't speak. Tsubaki knew what he meant now. His face suddenly changed to a childish look. I can't tell you, so Tan. He sent her a wink before picking up his bag, signaling he was done with his homework. Naruto, what are you threatening Saji about? Sona was a little angry. She hated when Seraphal and Naruto did that. They would pique her curiosity and then deny her the knowledge she yearned for. She pressed him by glaring. She repeated the question, causing Naruto to start sweating. As she moved closer to him, he looked around and brought up a teleportation circle for himself. Sorry, Sotan, but I can't tell you. He smirked smugly. Naruto, tell me, why are you threatening Saji? She really was getting angry. If you don't tell me, I'll take you to the doctor if you deny me the information I seek. She spoke menacingly and got closer to the still sweating Naruto. No, Naruto had a look of absolute horror. I'll just have to get away for a few days. His words were lost to her as she thought he was bluffing. He wouldn't miss school, right? Going peerage hunting by. Just like that he was gone. It was a few silent moments later Sona remembered her and Naruto had a group project due the next day and he had half of it. Naruto. Time skip, next day. Naruto took a few hours to escape Sona. It was surprising how much stronger she was when it came to school. She flew, ran faster than him. When she finally caught him, he tried to fight his way out but was denied, when she created a semi-tsunami with magic. She overpowered him and he raised the white flag. When Sona received his half of the project, she left. He and Valerie left soon after. It led them to their current situation. Valerie-chan, hurry up, we're almost there. Naruto spoke in a whiny voice. The two were headed to a Japanese house in the suburbs of Tokyo. Meanies, I told them I just wanted to get through. Naruto muttered. Naruto, where are we going? Valerie asked. She was in the dark. Naruto suddenly grabbed her and said they were going on a trip for a few days. She still didn't know where they were going. Well, we're going to visit him. Recognition shone through her eyes. She remembered him, but she didn't know they were going to get him. Him, as in your bishop. She noticed a small nod and small laced Naruto's face. He seemed to be excited, but who wouldn't be when you go and visit your lonely, not, peerage member? Yes, Naruto had one member of his peerage before his first year. He apparently was kicked out of his family as a kid for not using the fire they were famous for. He moved to China and made a living there. He had fell in love with a woman and lived a happy life before the supernatural found him again. A group of stray priests used his girlfriend as a sacrifice to lure devils. Naruto was given the job of exterminating stray devils in the area, and the event led to Naruto having to do battle. His soon-to-be bishop was broken. He felt weak and Naruto offered him power. Naruto turned him into a devil and had him taught wind magic by the wind spirits in North America. They had owed his mother a favor, and what better way to use a favor than on your child? It was funny to see him flourish with the wind spirits over the fire he was meant to thrive in. The boy stated he wanted to do his own thing and only sent Naruto seasonal checkups. His bishop traveled the world doing some work for the NA spirits and taking out a stray devil every now and then. Naruto pretty much gave Kazuma, his bishop, free rein. Now though, with Valerie being exposed to the underworld, he wanted to have his peerage together. After all, the first night he received 665 trade requests. Having a Longinus user, he was bound to be hounded with trade request. But add the fact she was a stunning beauty. He wished people would understand that he didn't want anything in exchange for her. The house they were heading to was in the middle of a compound. It was the Kanagi complex. Behind the two were several bodies laying on the ground, black and blue. Before they could get to the house they were looking for, a group of people with their target was standing in front of the house. A few minutes ago, Kazuma Yagami was bored. He was stuck listening to this boring meeting about some plan to exorcise a building that was overrun with a few hundred evil spirits. But he smirked. These weaklings are paying me, so I might as well enjoy this. He made a funnel of wind and sent it behind everyone and into Ayano's hair. As he reveled in her annoyance, a boom in the distance caught everyone's attention. Knock knock, Jugo-sama, we are under attack. A guard came in looking almost fearful. The sound of girlish screams came closer. The news that the compound was mixed with gasp and Ayano's power flaring. Suddenly a body flew through the door and hit the wall a few millimeters to Kazuma's left. He just ignored the pathetic form of the guard and picked up his tea and took a sip. WHO dares attack the Kanagi family. The hellish screams of the Kanagi heir was heard throughout the room. Jugo calmly sipped his tea and looked at Kazuma, who had a twitching eyebrow despite his attempts to hide it behind his teacup. Kazuma-kun, do you know anything about our attacker? Kazuma remained silent as all eyes turned to him. He opened his mouth to speak only to be cut off by a voice coming from outside. Valerie-chan, hurry up, we're almost there, a whiny voice called from outside. The twitching of his eyebrow increased. The others looked on expectantly as they saw annoyance and embarrassment flash through his eyes. Naruto, where are we going? This time a feminine voice called back, and the others watched as Kazuma sighed in relief of something. With Valerie with him, he's less likely to go crazy. Kazuma could only hope Valerie could hold Naruto back some. Well, we're going to visit him. Kazuma sighed again before walking over to the down door and looking through it to see his king and queen looking towards his direction, and he could feel the heated gaze of his former family members behind him. What are you doing here? Kazuma had an annoyed voice that barely managed to hide the nervousness in his voice. After all, Naruto would probably blow the whole compound up if he didn't play this carefully. That or start trying to embarrass him. He didn't know why Naruto was so moody when it came to him. All he knew was it came from some Greek goddess. So mean after not seeing each other in so long. It makes me want to freeze this compound over. Naruto spoke with an uncharacteristically dark voice. It made the others in the compound freeze in place. I'm afraid you ain't gonna be able to do that. I'm currently contracted by this family. Kazuma spoke in his usual arrogant tone. Wait, did you say contracted? Kazuma nodded to the question. Kazuma Yagami, this is your family, you shouldn't be charging them for anything. Naruto spoke like a mother chiding their 5-year-old. Now return the money like a good person. Naruto crossed his arms and glared a little at Kazuma as they continued their staring contest. Naruto let out a frustrated huff and turned towards Valerie, who had her head tilted with a smile on her face. So money hungry. And I don't even know why my family is super rich. Naruto mumbled to himself but was loud enough for the Kanagis to hear. Now what are you doing here? Kazuma asked in a more demanding tone, cutting off Naruto's rant, before smirking and pointing at the downed Kanagi guards. And what happened with them? He asked in a more amused tone. I told them I wanted to get through and they aimed their weapons at me. Naruto spoke in an exasperated tone, waving his arms in the air for dramatic effect. It was almost like they think I'm a villain. He pouted and crossed his arms. All you had to do was tell them your reasons for being here. Kazuma deadpanned. I want you to come to Kuo when you're done, please? He noticed Kazuma didn't look as if he wanted to come. Pretty please? Kazuma still didn't budge. Sigh, I'll pay you for your services. Kazuma looked thoughtful but nodded. Naruto was about to go to him, but he had to jump out of the way of a flaming sword. That wasn't nice. How dare you attack the Kanagi? The girl didn't stop and charged with the sword in hand towards Naruto. All the men surrounding who knew who Naruto moved to stop her but were too slow to stop her charge. Take this. As she got closer, everyone was shocked Naruto didn't move. If anything, he looked jubilant. When the sword connected with him, the fire and blade all froze as it hit his body. He froze. Enraya, was the collective thought of the Kanagi family. Ayano, stand down. It is not nice to attack guest. The now named Ayano looked at the man confused and slightly angered. The man looked back towards a smiling Naruto. What does the son of the current Leviathan want with my dearest nephew? Time skip 2 days later. That was nice, ne Valerie-chan? Naruto looked at his traveling companion with a smile. Yes, Naruto-kun, they were nice, though Ayano-san was a little strange. The girl spoke the last part with a small sweat drop. After they were settled in, she and Naruto somewhat hit it off. It's a shame she didn't want to become a member of your peerage. He sparred with her during the mornings and then had eating contests with him, but she claimed she had no interest in reincarnating as his pawn. Are we headed back to Kuo? No, we're going to Europe. He noticed her stiffen a little. It's just to collect the last of my peerage. We have to stop by southern Italy. That did little to help her relax. If you want, you can head home with Gasper-kun. I'm sure he wants to see you after these last couple of days. He saw her relax a little and smile at him. Thank you, Naruto-kun. I'll see you back in Kuo. She gave him a kiss on the cheek, eliciting a small blush from the ice user. She giggled a little at his reaction. Be safe. With that, she stepped back and teleported out, leaving a shocked Naruto. Did I just blush, damn it? Naruto threw a mental tantrum and let his power seep off of him in droves as he mentally berated himself. I don't blush. Asia blushes, not me. After taking a few minutes to calm himself, he left a scared city in Japan. Naruto was funny when it came to his peerage. Valerie was his first member and Bova his last. Between the two, he had 3 other peerage members. He gained Kazuma right after Valerie and the others in the subsequent months. He gained all his peerage members from the day before he went to school to the end of his 2nd year. The only thing was he gave them nearly complete autonomy. All they had to do was give him a little update, contract numbers, and kill a few strays here and there. They might have been strong by now. Naruto didn't know. The only thing he knew was they had 0 team training. Normally that wouldn't be that important, but the Young Devils meeting was coming up. He only needed them for a few weeks. They would be there for the meeting and then training for his first raiding game. He made his way through the country known as Italy. He sent a message to the church letting them know his entry, as to not cause any incident. He really was not in the mood for fights, they get annoying sometimes. He made his way in from Sicily, as all of Italy had a barrier over it preventing teleportation by those below Satan, Seraph, God level. The barrier was able to be tweaked to allow others in. It was erected in the 1900s because a bunch of devils would teleport there to go peerage hunting and were killed. The barrier apparently had the approval of Azazel and the Satans. He was about halfway to his destination after an hour of flying. His destination was a suburb of Naples. As he settled on the ground next to a trail in the countryside, he decided to take a little break. He had a little more than an hour of flying left and he was hungry. He had seen a trattoria a little ways up the road. Naruto made it to restaurant and ordered some bread for a snack. As he got done, he took the wrap to the trash and walked a little to a clearing. You can come out now. Naruto spoke in a calm voice. A girl who looked a few years younger than him, with white hair, came from the trees surrounding him. She pulled out a sword and charged at him. Pozakazu moe labavnasi v dolzny bit ubati. By order of my mistress you are to die. The girl slashed at Naruto and hit a wall of ice. The sword was surrounded in the ice. The dialogue is still in Russian. Naruto smirked. He could understand every language, so he knew what the girl was saying even if it was in Russian. But Naruto was shocked when he saw the sword eating the magic that was in the ice. He looked on as the girl's sword seemed to release an expanding magical aura. Wait a minute. Magic-eating sword, white hair, short girl, not too short though. You're the man-eater, aren't you? The girl never responded, she just started running back to Naruto. As she slashed her sword, he flipped backwards, dodging a few strikes as he did. When he landed, he opened his hand and let a bird of ice fly out and towards his opponent. It caught the girl off guard and the bird struck, pushing the girl back. I still don't have that under control. It might not work next time. Why would I be on your mistress' hit list? The girl got up and pointed her sword towards him. The reasons of clientele is not disclosed. Naruto nodded, figuring out she was a mercenary. Naruto saw his magic get pulled out in a small stream towards the girl's ever-expanding magical aura through her sword. Naruto started panting a little. I have to finish this quickly. Naruto built a sword out of ice in his hand while willing chains with the other. He ran towards the girl, who started running forward as well. She edged her sword back as she came within 10 feet. She thrust her sword forward to hit him, only for Naruto to turn into ice and her sword eat off the magic. Suddenly ice rose from around her and trapped her in a box. The magic sword she had could not suck in the magic. If anything, her magic was getting sucked into the ice. She heard a voice echoing everywhere in her head. If you want your brother back. She looked around only to hear it again. Your brother. She broke down and her magic fluctuated greatly. AAARRRGGGHHH. She struck the ice over and over, only for it to get thicker and stronger. She then blacked out. The ice fell and Naruto suddenly walked out panting. Dynamic still takes a lot of energy. I just hope I can finish before I fight you. Naruto looked towards his would-be assassin and the sword next to her. She was undoubtedly human. He went to her and felt her power. It was on par with Akino's, but he could tell her morales were a little off. He suddenly felt an intrusion. In her brain he felt the distortion, which was a sign of an illusion. He touched her head and released a pulse of magic, effectively breaking the illusion. The girl shot up and looked around. She looked towards Naruto before suddenly breaking down. What's wrong? Naruto's voice was filled with compassion and genuine worry. The girl looked at him still crying before bowing down with her head on the ground. Forgive me, forgive me, forgive me. The girl continued her begging until Naruto pulled her up. What are you begging for? I tried to kill you. You won, so kill me already. The girl had a face that was mixed with both guilt, sorrow, and anger. No. His response shocked the girl. That's taking the easy way out. You wish to pay for your crimes? I see it in your face. So repent, but don't give up. Naruto looked as if he could see into her soul while staring into her eyes. Neither moved until she fell again, crying. I don't deserve to repent. I've ruined people's lives for something that wasn't even real. I never had a brother. How was I supposed to know it was all a trick? The girl had snot coming from her nose as she looked almost desperate. I don't even know how to repent. How do I do it? First is to stop crying. I know you are upset and sad. But you crying is not going to change anything. The girl shook her head. Naruto got on a knee and placed a hand on her shoulder. Besides, you are too pretty to cry. The girl looked up with a shocked and awful expression on her face. Naruto just smiled warmly. I see, then let me serve you, until I can forgive myself. The girl's words shocked Naruto before he smiled and nodded. Naruto sent the girl, Elena Arshavina, who was also his new knight, back to Kuo with a message to Rias to have her enrolled in school. He also sent a message to his mother, since he just had an assassin sent after him. He had took off immediately after he left the message, since he had one more stop and he took a few days off of work. He made it to the countryside near Naples. In the middle there was a few large mansions and other buildings. He headed for one of the bigger ones while dodging bullets and other attacks. He crashed into a window near a bed. In the bed was a teenage boy and a baby. He grabbed both and teleported to Japan. I am so glad I can teleport out of Italy. They can be a little assholish with the way they treat me. When the light around him died down, he was in his room and he set the boy down on his baby had disappeared though. When Naruto turned to look for him, he was pushed back with a kick to the face. Chao Su. The baby spoke as he sat on Naruto's head. Hello reborn, how's Suna been? Naruto asked as he looked at the baby. He was doing fine, but I guess he still needs training if you were able to kidnap him that easily. The baby was a little sadistic, that was a fact. Not on Akino's level but still a little sadistic. Yep, Naruto's rook was Tsunayoshi Sawada of the Vongola Decimo. The Vongola was a mafia family filled with mages. They were one of the first to utilize mages and soon grew to be the biggest. They were said to be rivals to Magician's Council. The two were like the US and China. They would work together but were far from friends. Naruto had a deal with the Vongola stating he could not directly meddle in their affairs when Suna becomes boss. He was not even supposed to step in any Vongola bases, but they were a little loose on punishing him encroaching on their territory. I only need him for a few weeks. We might have a raiding game coming up and I need all my pieces. Reborn nodded. The agreement stated if Naruto needed Suna he could, but Suna had to be returned within 3 months, and the Vongola hospital is the only one he can go to for major surgeries. Dame Suna, wake up. Naruto had to wince. He knew the woes of having a sadistic trainer. He still had the scars from when his mother taught him how to make magically draining ice. Oh Naruto. The soon-to-be Vongola boss looked around at the new room before seeing his king. Reborn suddenly kicked Suna. Naruto had to sigh. Boom. Naruto looked out over to the window and despite seeing nothing could feel the power coming from the school. He looked back towards Suna before nodding and sending out a pulse of magic. The boys and baby were teleported to the school. After arriving to the school, Naruto was met with the panting form of Sona. She looked at him and shook her head. Pant, Naruto, go away. Kokebiel wants to kill us, not even you can beat him. Sona spoke harshly whilst putting in magic for the barrier. You want me to just leave you and Rias here? No way. Naruto stared at her in disbelief. If we die you and Malikas can take over the families, but if you die the house of Citri will be left without an heir. Sona stared at him with a glare. This is not about the family. This is about you telling E to abandon my friends. Listen to me. I am your aunt and I told you to leave, you don't need to die too. Naruto was wide-eyed at the end of her rant. She was just trying to keep him safe. He suddenly jumped down to the ground before looking up with a smirk. Don't worry Sotan, I won't die before we open up that raiding game school. Believe it. And with that he took off with his peerage behind him. He never noticed the tear rolling down Sona's cheek. Imagine what your death would mean to Oni-sama. You're worth more than you know. She pushed her glasses up in a move to block her wiping her tears. We need to strengthen the barrier now. And with that her peerage went to work on the barrier. Then I will tell you. In the war between the 3 sides, not only the Yandai Mao but also God died. When Naruto arrived that was what was coming from the cadre's mouth. The whole battlefield was quiet. There was no sound for a moment. Lies, it's a lie? A woman with blue hair spoke with disbelief evident in her eyes. Kokebiel began to laugh. Naruto shook off his shock before creating a bow and arrow made of ice. He aimed for Kokebiel's forehead between the eyes and shot. It came close but at the last moment Kokebiel sent out his magic breaking it. Kokebiel turned towards Naruto before smirking. Now I get the son of Leviathan already, maybe it is my lucky day. I will start a war with you as my first casualty. Or maybe I should keep you alive to kill before your mother. Kokebiel seemed to ask himself the last part but the whole comment made Naruto's body shake. No one here will be killed, but you. Naruto spoke in a hushed voice, as he looked around the school at the orc members. Kokebiel began to laugh at Naruto's comment. You can't touch me, maybe I'll go at your mother in front of you before killing you. That comment made Naruto shake before his magic fluctuated. Naruto suddenly released a large amount of magic at once before framing it into a giant block of ice. Kokebiel's magic was being sucked off of him at a fast rate. Naruto then charged him and began to smack around the cadre with his superior physical abilities. He sent a right hook followed by a left undercut before using both hands to smack Kokebiel to the ground. Naruto looked back as he felt the rising of magical power. He was met with Suna standing with his arms spread out and a lot of fire coming from behind him. To his left he saw Kazuma probably planning to use his wind to propagate the flames. And below Kazuma as Bova. The 3 all looked to be waiting for the best moment to strike. Naruto created communication spells that went into everyone's ears. Suna, Bova, wait for me to get him on the ground then launch. The 2 gave nods that were not noticeable in the dark, even with the fire illuminating their faces. Alana, protect Rias and her peerage. The girl nodded again. Kokebiel flew up and grabbed Naruto before throwing him into a tree, before launching a light spear at him. Naruto dodged before flipping to the ground. He ran forward while making a few ants out of ice. They burrowed their way into the ground and disappeared from Naruto's view. He ignored the fatigue of using incomplete moves in favor of jumping towards the sky. He brought out his wings and tried to use his favorable maneuverability to get behind Kokebeel. The Kadri moved swiftly to avoid a punch Naruto sent, giving him the opening to move around. You know, even a heavily outmatched opponent can win with good planning. Naruto pulled on Kokebeel's wings and threw him down by the wings. When he hit the ground, he attempted to stand only for the land he was on to collapse. He was about to move to get out, but the temperature went up drastically. He looked to his left and was hit by a giant stream of fire. Is it over? Naruto asked in between pants. I think it might be. He was swallowed by the flames. Even he should have trouble coming out unscathed. Their moment of rest was interrupted as laughter echoed through the schoolyard. Naruto immediately flew up to face the threat that was thought to have been injured. As the Kadri got up, Naruto flew down towards him. Naruto, though, was forced to stop and cut left to dodge some of Kokebeel's feathers that were launched towards the boy, before Naruto felt a sharp pain in his legs. He looked down and saw two light spears that stuck out of his legs. He could hear the orc gasp behind him at the sight. As Naruto got up, he noticed the ice around them melt. He was forced to look at Kokebeel raising his hand and building a light spear. The spear grew larger and larger. I am done with you. I'll just tell your mother the way you died like a dog. Naruto saw a blur descend from the skies. Vanishing dragon. He heard Kokebeel speak, but afterwards he passed out due to the effects of the light. Naruto awoke 2 days later in his room. He was met with a mop of blonde hair. He shot up and took in his surroundings and noticed it was his room, and the person slowly waking up next to him was Valerie. Valerie-chan? What's going on? He was a little dazed, but he thought he saw tears in her eyes. But his thoughts were interrupted as she clung to him. Naruto-kun. He shook off any remaining days he had. He nodded and leaned into the embrace. Everyone was worried about you. You've been out a couple days. That felt like a punch to the gut for Naruto. 2 days for a little light? 2 days from only 2 hits? Naruto was already planning a 10-hour training plan for the weekend. If Sira Org finds out about this, I'll be a laughing stock. Yes, but we couldn't touch your body for hours after the fight, as there was still a lot of light residue. I think Kokebeel's attack had some highly condensed light in it. She finished her story as Naruto listened attentively. Well, he is a Kadri class 1, suppose his light would pack a bigger punch. Naruto thought to himself. He looked at the Dampier only to realize she was naked. This caused Naruto to fall out of the bed when he jumped back, completely from shock. I think she's spending too much time with Rias and Akeno. Valerie-chan? Why are you naked? Said girl looked down before blushing. Rias and Akeno said healing would work best if I was naked. Naruto had to facepalm. It was like those two were trying to corrupt her. Everyone knew Valerie was good with healing magic. They were worried about you. Naruto looked up at the girl who was now getting dressed. They would look after you at night and only let me see you when they were at school. When they got back, they would come straight to us. Valerie explained while still getting dressed. I see. What happened while I was out? Naruto wanted to change the mood as it was a little depressing. Oh, well, Rias got a new piece. She was a member from the church that was excommunicated for knowing about God's death. She wields the holy sword Durandal. Naruto suspected Sona might have been a little upset over Rias getting a new piece. She must have mopped for a while thinking, why did Rias get all the good prospects? Elena and Kaneko hit it off. Alana was even put in the same class as Kaneko. Naruto nodded with a smile. It would be good for those two. They were both emotionally stunted, so it would help them. It was dark. Everywhere there was bodies and blood. Mud on everybody's skin. The people surrounding him were all panting. To his left and right were two people he knew, but couldn't grasp their names. His vision zoomed out. Now behind him was another blonde-haired man with no arms. Also behind him was a ghostly figure of a woman with straight red hair. The vision zoomed out again. Now there was several people. All were leaking a blue energy into him. He recognized the feeling as chakra. The only difference was this was much more pure. He raised his hand and a giant Fuma shuriken made out of chakra and wind formed in his hand. Suddenly the vision went black. When he was able to see again, he was in a sewer. He looked down and his right eye was blood red with 9 tomo on 3 rings around the pupil. He looked back up. There was a giant cage with several pipes going into it. Suddenly he saw 2 red eyes. The eyes stared at him almost as if piercing his soul. Suddenly there was a growl. Naruto was thrown backwards and tumbled through the water. You are not ready yet. Don't come back until you are. Naruto was suddenly flung from the sewer. The red eyes retracted back into the cage. Stupid transmigrant. Naruto woke up panting. He looked around to see that it was still dark outside. Naruto sighed. He was already up. Naruto sat up and began to think. What was up with that dream? Who was that behind the cage? He felt a familiar presence but couldn't put his finger on it. The battlefield was all too real to be just a normal dream. He decided to go get something to drink, never noticing the fading of his eyes from blood red to the normal blue. As he walked down the stairs he sensed another presence on near the kitchen. Quickly remembering he lived in a house with 2 vampires, he continued his descent. As he arrived in his kitchen he reached for a glass before turning to the sound of feet hitting the ground quietly. It is Queen Valerie. When she saw him she looked a little surprised. Naruto-kun, what are you doing up? The Dampier asked as she took in the form of her king. I was thirsty so I came down for something to drink. The Dampier looked at him unbelieving. What is really going on? Your power is slightly fluctuating. What's wrong? Valerie looked genuinely concerned. Naruto's eyes softened a little. I just had a nightmare, nothing to worry about. The vampire hesitantly nodded, still not believing that was the full story. It's nothing serious. I'll see you in later. With that the boy moved up the stairs a little quickly as if trying to avoid talking about whatever was happening. Naruto-kun. Naruto turned to see an angry Rias. Quickly recounting his activities and knowing he didn't upset her he responded kindly. Yes, Rias-chan? Naruto even tilted his head in an attempt to shave off some of her anger. Azazel has encroached on my territory. She growls out the words as if she is prepared to go to war. Naruto unconsciously takes a step back. I should go over to him and blast him to oblivion. Rias-chan? The girl turned her head so fast he expected her to get whiplash. What? Naruto gulped before speaking, a little hesitant. Maybe you should calm down and think this through. Naruto was failing to gain control of the situation if her power output was still growing. Issei and the others walked in during their conversation and understood what Rias was mad about. The others slowly inched back, seeing her power grow even further. He had no business in my territory. Azazel has always been like that, Rias. Suddenly, the teens heard a voice that belonged to nobody among them. Everybody looked at the direction the voice came from and a crimson-haired male was smiling pleasantly. Oh Oni-sama. Rias and Naruto spoke at the same time in a surprised voice. Azazel won't do anything like Kokebiel did a few days ago. He may do a prank like last time, though. The governor will come earlier than the planned date. Please relax, I came for private business today. Oni-sama. Why are you here? Rias asked doubtfully. Well, that was a given. It was not really reasonable for the Mao who carries the Devil Society to show up in the human world in a school's club room. After she said that, Sirzex handed over an unfilled printed form from the school to Rias. What are you saying? Classroom visits are coming soon, right? I am also thinking to participate. By all means, I want to see my little sister working hard and studies from up close. Rias and Naruto had to facepalm. Siscon was the common thought. I wonder if Ka-tan will show? Naruto truly didn't know whether his mother was coming or not. She was the Leviathan and she had a lot of preparation to do for the upcoming meeting, as the devil in charge of foreign affairs. Only time would tell though. Even if my Mao duties are hard, even if I have to take a day off from my work, I wanted to participate in my little sister's class visit. Don't worry, Oto-san will come over as well. Rias seemed in a conflict of emotions. Naruto could see embarrassment, anger, and a little despair. He could only gain an amused smile. That's not true. Aren't you the Mao? To leave your job and come here. The Mao can't treat a single devil in a special way. Since Ria's brother is the Mao, no matter if they are blood relatives, she can't be treated specially. However, Sirzex turns his head sideways. No, this is my work as well, Rias. Actually, I thought about conducting the conference between the 3 factions in this school. I came to inspect the meeting place. Sirzex seemed to turn around and look at the members of Rias' peerage. I have to go to my peerage. Naruto proceeded to wave to the other teens in the room and Sirzex. When he got to Grafia he pulled out flowers from who knows where and handed them to Grafia. Remember Gray-chan, when you're done with Satan Red, you can always hang with me. The boy then kissed her on the cheek before teleporting away. Rias and Akano seemed to fume. The battle with Kokabeel showed Naruto a lot of things. He wasn't strong enough to protect his friends and family. It changed his mindset. He originally thought he could handle anything that threatened him or anyone he wanted to protect. He didn't think the big fish would be attracted to him in the first place. He just now learned he needed to train more or his power would fail him. While he wasn't arrogant before, you could say he wasn't as motivated. His only motivation was keeping up with Siroorg, but he didn't train as much as he could. That all was changing today though. Naruto was implementing a new training session anytime he didn't have work. He was going to drag his peerage Aline. While they knew each other's strength and were all familiar with each other with the exception of Elena, he was going to do team building exercises. They were each strong in their own right, but together they were a bit lacking. They each knew how to complement each other, but they had no practice. After Naruto had finalized his plans, he looked up at his gathered peerage before smiling insanely. They are not going to like this. Alright, 30 laps, around town. Get moving. All members groaned before all including Naruto were off. Time skip 4 hours. All the members of Naruto's peerage were on their hands and knees except for a heavy breathing Naruto and a relatively unfazed Bova. They really couldn't tell how the sea tree was still standing. Bova was easy, he was a dragon, but no devil should still be standing. They ran their laps and did several conditioning exercises. They were out of it and he looked like he could go in a few minutes. When Naruto caught his breath, he flashed his peerage a smile. I want to spar you guys throughout the week. All members paled immediately. They knew their king was not one to be trifled with unless you were ultimate class or above. I think it is necessary for our growth that both yourself and the rest of the peerage know your limits. So let's see. Naruto looked over each peerage member who shifted uncomfortably under his gaze. He looked toward Elena. Kak v Podadite K Studentskij Zizni, how are you adjusting to student life? While he knew she could understand any language as a devil, he preferred talking to her in her native language. Etu bilo slazno, no e nikao privikat k nemu. It has been difficult, but I have started to get used to it. Came the slightly embarrassed reply. Naruto nodded curtly before moving on. He looked at Kazuma. Still charging your family? The boy nodded almost proudly. Naruto sighed and shook his head before moving on. Come va con Kella Rigaza? Naruto aimed his question at Suna. The boy looked confused. Why was he speaking to him in Italian? I don't speak Italian. The boy smiled a little sheepishly. Dame Suna, said boy, deflated at his king's comment. I've decided, come at me Su-kun. Suna boy panicked and went red from embarrassment. After watching the boy pop his pills, Naruto charged. Suna backed up slightly and tried to deflect the hit, but still took on a lot of damage due to the power behind it. The two boys got into a fist fight with neither giving up ground until Suna ducked under a punch and sent Naruto back with an elbow to the stomach. The boy used the moment to his advantage and charged his X-burner. Rasen Shuriken. Naruto had an image of himself throwing a giant wind shuriken at an orange-haired person. He instinctively put his hand up and felt a familiar feeling swirl and some water collecting around it. However, right when it looked like everything would come together, it exploded, knocking Naruto back and disrupting Suna. Naruto. His peerage all ran around him as he dusted himself off. Are you okay? What was that? Valerie immediately went to healing his injuries that came from the explosion. Whatever that move was, it packed a punch. I don't know what that was, it just happened. I think that will be all for today. You guys really look out of it. Starting tomorrow we'll continue conditioning, and then some drills to help us get used to fighting as a group. He looked to Kazuma. If you miss out, I'll double your regiment. With that, Naruto seemingly disappeared into the night before anyone could say anything. When Naruto returned to his house, he went straight to the bathroom. He began running cold water and splashed some in his face. I'm gonna be the Hokage one day, believe it. If you ever touch my sensei again, I'll kill you. Visions, voices seemed to flood Naruto's mind. He wasn't dreaming yet, he could see it clearly. It was almost as if he was really there. Ero Sennin, Tsunade Ba-chan, Kakashi-sensei, Sakura-chan. Naruto could see fuzzy images of faces and hear the names. He shook his head and slapped his face. He turned around to walk out of the bathroom. When he opened the door, he was in a valley. The valley had two giant stone statues facing each other, making a symbol with their hands. He saw two more figures on top of the statues. They suddenly jumped towards each other. Naruto, Sasuke. The two met in the middle before there was a blast that knocked Naruto backwards. When he opened his eyes again and he was back in the sewer. This time though there was no eyes. He walked up to the bars and reached to touch them. When he did his hand was grabbed and he was thrown. When he looked at the source of the hand he was met with the blonde hair of a figure he knew as his deceased father. Toussaint? Naruto was unsure as to what he was experiencing. The older blonde flashed a smile but did not respond. Where are we? Why are we here? I thought you were dead, how are you here? Naruto asked questions so rapidly he didn't give Minato a chance to respond. Instead of responding though, Minato began to fade away. Before he faded completely though, Naruto heard a whisper of the voice he only ever heard through video and on TV. Speak with Kushi-chan, she has all the answers. After the Minato faded into nothingness and Naruto was kicked out of the sewer. He opened his eyes again and he was back in his hallway. Naruto wiped a bead of sweat off of his forehead and walked towards his room. As he walked past a window the sun seemingly got brighter and focused on him. He paid it no mind and continued towards his room. It had been 2 days since Naruto had first started seeing the visions from the past. He at first wanted to deem them as unimportant but they became more and more frequent. He went from a few visions the first day to a few every hour. He had already cleared his upcoming off day for a brief trip to the underworld. It was getting too frequent to dodge the issue any longer. Naruto used the teleportation circle in his basement to get to the Sea-Tree Castle. He greeted all the maids he passed on his way to Kushina's quarters. He knew his grandparent were out on official Sea-Tree business. As he walked towards the housing for the maids he took note of the oriental theme that got heavier the closer to Kushina's door he got. Once there he knocked on the door. Come in. He heard the voice of his father's mistress. Excuse me. He walked in and almost immediately she stood on her feet. Oba-san. He nodded curtly to his bowing ant figure. I have been having visions. She seemed to beam a little when he said that. I don't remember anything in the visions happening for real but they felt real. I then think I saw. He trailed off a little. Who did you see? She seemed to have an almost hopeful look on her face. It was my father. He appeared and said you had the answers. He looked at her expectantly whereas she looked thoughtful. I see. Well, I can give you the answers. He looked bright as he stared at her. Just not all at once. He deflated a little. Huh? What do you mean not all at once? He was a little upset being left out of the loop. She looked unfazed by his comments. You were never allowed to learn all at once? Not even the first time around. She mumbled the last part out and Naruto couldn't understand. She looked him in the eye and spoke proudly. You are the descendant and reincarnation of the very first hero, Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto walked slowly towards the school deep in thought. He was still in shock a little from his conversation with Kushina. It was not every day you learn of a forgotten hero. Naruto Uzumaki was a name known across all pantheons but only by the highest gods, as a way to ensure his power never be recreated in a human. Apparently in the early stages of the world the Oriental gods had their own continent that was about the size of China. It was inhabited by their subjects. All the life on this continent was mainly supported by a tree blessed by all the gods and goddesses of the pantheon. It was a fascinating tale. By the time Naruto came along the power of the tree had its power distributed to the population and was long forgotten. Naruto grew into a strong warrior despite his inhibitions throughout his childhood. He was on par with gods and was favored by several primordials, including Gaia from Greece. Naruto's popularity with the primordials made other gods weary of him. He was lured into a trap by a coalition of Mesopotamian and Slavic gods leading to his death, with the aid of a white snake. The Oriental gods angered by this vowed revenge. Naruto was subsequently reincarnated several times over history. Most of his reincarnations enjoyed a quiet life whereas a few were warriors once again. One was a king favored by Ares. He thought about his mother before gaining a pained expression. He remembered what Kushina said. I am the reincarnation of Naruto's first mother. Minato was the first reincarnation of his mother. Every time we have been reincarnated one or both of us have been deceased. Naruto looked confused. In your first life both of us died the night of your birth. When we are reincarnated we always meet and fall in love. Sometimes though you are born to another mother. Once you were the son of a queen who had an affair with Minato. He was then killed by the king. In every situation, whoever is your biological parent dies shortly after your birth. This time it was Minato's time. Kushina had tears in her eyes from having to bury her love another time. Naruto was still told Kushina was not his mother, she wouldn't be the mother to him until possibly the next reincarnation. At least the frequency of the visions dropped though. Now he only received them when it pertained to a situation he was in. He found that out when he was training and heard a bell. Naruto was shaken out of his thoughts by a loud scream. ellipsis ... IIDIOOT. What are you taking out in front of the public? It sounded like Issei. Naruto was informed by Rias that Xenovia was gunning for Issei hard. Apparently she wanted babies with a strong being. Her options were limited between Issei, the Sekiryute, and Naruto, the strongest devil around. Luckily Naruto has been Mia for the most part. Naruto arrived in class and was shocked to see his grandparents Lord and Lady Citri. He expected them to be on business trips, not at class visitations. He looked at the other parents and noticed Zeoticus Gremory was there along with Circex and Graphia. He took his seat as class began. Class was going by nicely. Naruto did feel the need to utterly destroy Issei for some reason. With Issei looked down at his hands and realized he had created a statue of Rias in nothing but her underwear and bra in a seductive pose, winking and blowing a kiss. He never realized he was making it until he was completely finished. He was actually joyful that he made it though. Suddenly he felt a chill go down his back. I'm getting this most ominous feeling to avoid Naruto-senpai later. Back with Naruto. Did you hear? Issei of the perverted trio made a figurine of Rias Oni-sama near naked. All the devils looked towards Naruto and saw an ominous red and black cloud protruding from him. I'm gonna kill him, no, death would be too easy. Maybe I should unseal those memories and have Bova chase him. The others could do nothing but pray, even with the headaches, that Naruto didn't kill Issei. Rias suddenly smirked though. Now she had a present to give Naruto for his birthday and she could tell Naruto was fiercely protective of her. The longer Naruto had to think on the situation led to his shroud growing. It really was frightening. After class, Issei, can I have that figurine? Rias asked with a cute tilt of the head. The boy immediately handed it over to his king, with no second thought. It's incredibly well made. What else was I supposed to tell you? Rias started mumbling, but Issei heard her just fine. You were supposed to warn him, bucko. Akeno spoke with her motherly smile on her face. Oh yes, thank you, Akeno. Issei, whatever you do, don't meet with Naruto alone. He might kill you. No, wait, killing you might be too easy for him. The girl started rambling about what Naruto might do to Issei. Kiba soon arrived explaining there was a photography event happening in the gym. With nothing better to do, the orc went. When they arrived, Issei was shocked because there was a magical girl twirling, allowing students to take pictures of her. As he got closer to the scene, he had only one thought. Her skirt was short, her panties were being exposed. The moment Issei was done with that thought process, he shivered and suddenly felt a pulse of Naruto's power, with the room getting several degrees colder. Not that Issei noticed, since he went back to checking out the magical girl. Rias looked at Issei and had a sense of dread. That pulse was obviously a harbinger. If Naruto happened to arrive before the boys stopped checking out the one and only Leviathan, a lot of boys would be exposed to the supernatural world. Hey, disperse. Today's the day for displaying classes to the public. Don't make a ruckus in this place. Saji, he was doing his job properly. That big of a crowd was disappearing like spiders, children dispersing. The young men with the cameras who were photographing were also leaving reluctantly due to Saji's pushing. The remaining people were our group and Saji's group, and the cosplay girl. You, please don't wear that kind of costume. Wait, would you be a parent perhaps? Even if that's the case, you know there's a dress code according to the place. This is troublesome. The boy started rambling to the girl who looked as if she was always having fun no matter the situation. But this is my uniform. The girl performed a pose that nearly made Issei drool. He never noticed the temperature still dropping. Sona-chan, found you. After finding Sona, the cosplay girl happily clung to Kaichu. Sarah-chan, I don't know if Sona can breath. A man who looked like Sona spoke from behind the group of devils. It's Leviathan-sama. Rias whispered into the ears of both Saji and Issei. The super beauty is Mao-sama. No, indeed she's a super beauty. Even though she is Kaichu's Oni-sama, her beauty is something that won't lose to Bucko. Boobs huge as well, while showing her thighs from a slit. I imagined a female Mao-sama who would speak sensual words from her glossy lips. Issei nearly keeled over in a heart attack when his next thought left his mouth. Naruto-senpai's Ka-san, I'm dead, I just checked out his mother, he'll kill me. Yes, my Ka-tan was the woman you were just checking out. Issei heard a whisper voice in his ear. He looked to the left and he saw a mini Naruto on his shoulder. I'm going to kill you for this. But first I'll torture you slowly. I do have several ice picks. Issei couldn't help but have a mini heart attack at the thought of Naruto's wrath. Sona-chan, what's wrong? Your face is completely red, you know? Since it's the long-awaited reunion with your Oni-sama, I think it would be better if you were a bit more happy? Oni-sama, so-tan, calling each other like that and embracing each other in a Yuri way, that sort of development is fine with me as well, Oni-chan. Kaichu said with an unsatisfied expression, while twitching near her eyes. Oh Oni-sama, this is my school and I am entrusted with the job of the student council president here. No matter how close relatives we are, your behavior is too much. I can't approve of that sort of outfit. No way, Sona-chan. If I am told that by Sona-chan, your Oni-chan will be sad. Sona-chan doesn't know that her Oni-chan is admired as the magical girl. Since with the glittering stick, I erase angels and fallen angels. Sona looked around until she was face to face with Tsubaki. Go and find Naruto, now. Her voice was a harsh whisper and Rias was sure everyone in the room heard it, but Serafal stayed focused on Sona. With Naruto-sama Kaichu request your presence. Naruto looked at Tsubaki before bending down to get his drink from the vending machine. Does this have something to do with Ka-tan? When I felt her enter the school grounds I knew So-tan would have to talk to her about her eccentrics. It's always funny when those two meet. Don't you agree? Tsubaki looked at Naruto a bit warily and nodded. He seemed calm, too calm. Aren't you excited? Of course, but I have a feeling I'm going to need to torture someone very slowly for staring at her. Issei will meet his demise soon enough. Naruto's voice turned into a demonic voice that sent shivers down everyone who heard spines. Lead the way. The blonde was following while deciding which way to kill Issei, slowly of course. Maybe I'll slowly freeze him over a few hours. Mwahahahahaha. The blonde was smacked by his aunt's queen. Forgive me Naruto-sama, but Kaichu has ordered me to hit you when you laugh maniacally. The blonde could only pout before nodding. No, don't abandon your Oni-chan. So-tan, I have asked you so many times not to add tan. Naruto could only chuckle to himself as he heard the two sisters argue, well kinda argue. When the doors to the gym opened all the noise stopped. Suddenly Naruto was smothered in a bone-crushing hug. Naruto-tan. The blonde was suffocating and his vision was getting hazy. Suddenly his body went limp. Ah Naruto-tan. The Leviathan was frantically fussing over her unconscious son. Everyone present could only sweat drop. Suddenly there was a flash. Everyone looked over to a teary-eyed Lord Cetri who had a camera in his hand. Sniff, this reminds me of when he was younger and would visit the Gremory household. Serafal would constantly scream something about beating Rias-tan. Sniff, he was joined in a hug by a teary-eyed Lady Cetri. Sniff, I remember too dear. They grow up so fast. All other devils could only sweat drop. And they say the Gremorys are weird, was the common thought. Oh my, eyes. Oh Oto-san. Issei's parents moved towards the group with their hands. Hyodo Issei-kun, are those people your parents? Zeoticus spoke whilst stroking his beard. He looked to be scheming. Maybe I can have a good time with them. Why yes, they're my parents. Back with Serafal she was still over her seemingly lifeless son. With every passing second she was getting closer and closer to hysterics. Suddenly a giant gasp came as Naruto shot up from Serafal's lap. Before Serafal could glomp Naruto, Sona intervened. As much as you would like to hug Naruto, we must get to class. The student president forced all to return to their classes before the bell rang again. Naruto slowly crept up to Issei from behind. The boy was not paying attention at all, probably fantasizing about boobs. Naruto remembered he was supposed to get back at Issei for the statue of Rias. He crept, not making a single sound. When he arrived at his target, Naruto put his hand over Issei's head and sent a pulse out, breaking the seal. He watched as Issei fell unconscious, momentarily, in order to let his brain process the new information. He snuck out before Issei awoke. He headed downstairs in the Hyodo house to where his mother and Searsex were. They both were going back to his house afterward, so he stayed with them while they were still at the house. The rest of the orc left already. As Naruto arrived, he heard the two Satans wrap up the conversation. "Well, thank you for your hospitality." The boy heard Searsex wrap up his conversation with Issei's parents. The crimson-haired Satan was staying with him tonight since he gave Rias the okay to release Gasper. He wanted to do a quick checkup on Gasper before the unsealing. His mother was here because she wanted to trade stories with the Hyodo about their children. When he turned the corner leading to the kitchen, he was met with the sleeping form of his mother, the smiling face of Searsex, and the teary-eyed form of the Hyodo. "Yes, and please stop by any time." They exchanged bows and Naruto put his mother on his back. He and Searsex then walked towards his house enjoying the night sky. "Say, Naruto-kun, you and Rias are in love, correct?" Searsex suddenly asked, making Naruto stop in shock for a minute before moving again. That question was random and it just caught Naruto by surprise. "Ah, young love, you know, when I was younger I had a crush on Serafall. Then Minato came in and ruined it. That's when I met Graphia, and even though we didn't get along that great at first, we fell in love over time." Naruto remained silent as Searsex spoke of his young love life. It almost made Naruto wonder what he would have been like if he had that badass power of destruction to go along with his ice. Though he shook it off to put a disgusted face on. "That's gross, Blech, don't talk about my mother like that." Naruto turned away from Searsex, who chuckled a little. "You know, she had quite the fan club back in the day. She couldn't deal with them earlier on, but now she's an expert at it." Searsex looked on with a happy face while reminiscing. "I'm actually the one who started the club at first though." He was met with a blank stare from Naruto. He could only chuckle sheepishly and scratch his temple. "Back then I doted on her and not Rias. I didn't think it would get that out of control," was the weak reply. Suddenly the air got cold, and a giant ice pillar rose from under Searsex. He collapsed to the ground in pain due to his jewels taking the brunt of the force. "Screw you, Searsex." Serafall's voice was uncharacteristically dark, sending shivers down Naruto's back. When the three arrived at the new house, they noticed all the lights were off. Serafall still rested on Naruto's back. "Strange." Naruto voiced out his apprehension. Valerie was a vampire and should still be up. Kazuma should have just been returning from a contract. Suddenly Naruto's seal flashed on his wrist. That was a sure sign someone in his peerage was in trouble. He immediately teleported to his peerage, unintentionally taking Searsex and Serafall with him. When the three arrived, what they saw shocked them. All of Naruto's peerage was on the ground, some bleeding, others were on the ground unconscious. The only one not out was Valerie, but she was tending to the others. "Valerie-chan, what happened?" Valerie looked up with teary eyes. His name was Orochimaru. Serafall's and Searsex's eyes widened considerably. Naruto looked to be in a daze. "I want to obtain all the techniques and gain a true understanding of everything in this world. The first one to mix blue and yellow, called the new color, green. I want to do something similar to that. If blue is the chakra, then yellow is the seal, and green is the technique. Just as there is no end to the variety of colors, there are so many thousands, tens of thousands of techniques in the world as well. But in order to obtain every possible technique and truth, it would require an eternity. Only one who understands everything after spending such time on this can be fittingly called the ultimate being." He did some technique that brought back Yamata no Orochi. "I've been ridding everyone of the poison." She looked nervously at the other members of the peerage, her family. "I see. Are you done?" Naruto asked as he looked at her with kind eyes. When she nodded, his face turned serious. "Good, then rest. But first tell me where he went." Everyone looked at him horrified. "Naruto no. This person is too dangerous, leave him to me and Searsex." Serafall spoke with pleading eyes. "I can't, this is my peerage. How would it make me look if I just let him walk away? This is my duty as a king, and as the son of Serafall Leviathan and Minato Namikaze. I will not allow him to get away with this. I will fight to my—" Naruto suddenly slumped forward due to a chop to the back of his neck by Searsex. Searsex looked around and noticed almost the whole area they were in was covered in ice. Now Valerie-chan, where did he go? The girl nodded and pointed to the east. Serafal, take them home and put the other girls with Naruto. Call Ajuka and Falbium. I'll contact my peerage. I don't think that snake left Kuo. I'll put a couple of my peerage to guard them. Searsex spoke in a commanding voice that immediately put her to work. After 5 minutes all plans were in place for the Saiyans were in place. The matter was not only important because the child of a Saiyan and noble house was directly targeted, but also because the meeting between the factions was soon to take place. This would be a large hiccup if the meeting was postponed due to this incident. It was set place in a few days and the 4 Saiyans would be damned if something derailed the first real shot of peace between the 3 factions of the Bible. Ti Meskip, day of the conference. Today is the day, huh? Naruto looked with a curious glance towards his walking partner, Sona. She forced him to go early today because he needed remediation due to being out after the incident with his peerage. This was also a punishment for what he did to Rias, Pon, Issei Hyodo. While Sona personally enjoyed, though she might not say it, the punishment for the perverted boy, it was still cruel and unusual. A quick glance with his bespectacled eyes and she was very worried. Naruto did not have a single impulse to go find this Orochimaru character, it kinda scared her. Usually he would be up in arms that someone tried to hurt his friends, but he was just calm. Even when he woke up he seemed off. It creeped her out. So Tan? Her eye twitched. I heard you. And I told you to stop calling me that. He let out a loud laugh while rubbing the back of his head. It seemed kinda forced. It really was putting her off. Naruto? He looked at her with a raised eyebrow. Why are you acting like the other day didn't happen? Not that I'm hoping you will run around like an idiot yelling, "The sage will bring justice," but you're unusually calm, why is that? He looked to be thinking on his response. I'm just focused on my peerage. Ka Tan said she'd handle Orochimaru, so I'd rather focus on how Valerie, Bova and the others are doing. Sona nodded at his reasoning but didn't seem convinced. This was Naruto's C-tree they were talking about. He didn't let anything go this easily. Usually Serafal would have to freeze him when he tried to do rash things. It was kinda embarrassing, especially since Serafal called them love quarrels. I see, just make sure you pay attention in class. You wouldn't want to fail your last year. Naruto waved her off. He was doing an awesome job in school. Time skip. 3 factions meeting. Naruto and his peerage, still slightly banged up, were relegated to guard duty. They were not present for the start of Kokebiel's attack. He did hear about God's death, but it did not bother him since he already had his suspicions about the system. Valerie held the Holy Grail but he still made her a devil. It didn't seem suspicious at first, but as he got older he began to see things differently. Naruto, standing next to Valerie, stared over the city from the roof. Suddenly he felt a large buildup of magic, immediately putting them on guard. Soon legion after legion of magicians descended from the sky. Naruto looked at them but noticed they were staring at a smaller group. This group was headed towards the orc, quickly conjuring a communication spell to Kaneko and Rias, so everyone needed could hear. Magicians are attacking. Kaneko about 10 are headed towards you and Gasper. Naruto heard Kaneko telling him she heard and Rias informing the leaders. He quickly adjusted his hand in preparation for a spell. He slammed his hand on the ground creating an explosion of magical power no doubt felt by every magical creature in the city, felt it, but to humans it felt like a gust of wind due to the barrier. Blades of ice flew out of the ground. One magician who was hit, felt a cut where the ice hit, nearly separating their hand from their arm. Several other magicians were hit. After a minute the barrage of ice stopped and about half of the magicians all had wounds from the ice. Naruto looked at the remaining ones. All created attacks and were about to fire them off. Suddenly the magicians were forced to give up their attacks in favor of dodging. Several wind and fire attacks flew at them courtesy of Bova and Kazuma. Naruto looked at them gratefully. His whole peerage moved towards him. Suddenly everyone froze. Naruto who was holding Valerie and Kazuma were the only ones not frozen. Kazuma felt a burning on his chest. He looked and saw his blessing from the North American spirits coming to the surface. What is this? Kazuma asked as he knocked on Bova's wings. Naruto and Valerie shared a look. This is what it looks like when Gasper's sacred gear is activated. Kaneko, shit. Naruto cursed as he understood what the implications were. Kazuma, go and save Gasper and Kaneko. And hurry. The magicians they were previously fighting all were still able to move. They were at even more of a disadvantage now. Kazuma left the roof on a wind tornado. He moved with swiftness to provide any help for his king. Naruto stood back and brought his hands up as a giant tidal wave of water appeared sprouting from a small pond on the school campus. Several attacks from the magicians were absorbed by the wave before it collapsed. Naruto collapsed with it due to exhaustion. Naruto. He heard Valerie scream. Suddenly an attack of lightning magic was sent in his direction. He prepared to take the brunt but was surprised when he felt no pain. He suddenly heard an explosion. Looking in front of him, he saw an ice dome surrounding him. The ice dome retracted and Naruto was greeted to his mother's face. His other peerage members were also still frozen, and there was no sign of Kazuma, Gasper, or Kaneko. Looking forward he recognized a figure with her hand extended. It was Kateria Leviathan, a woman he was always told to flee if he saw. Looking back at his mother he saw she had a childish expression, close to a scowl before into a playful smile. Kateria-chan, why are you doing such a thing? Kateria showed a hateful expression at Seraphal's shout. You nearly hurt Naruto. Naruto's sweat dropped. Only his mother could act so childish in the middle of a battle. He actually expected her to freeze Japan when he was nearly killed, but she seemed joyful. Seraphal, how dare you act so shamelessly, as the one who stole the position of Leviathan from me? I'm descended from the original Leviathan. I was the one suited to be Mao. Kateria looked at Seraphal and Searsex with as much hate as she could. Her expression then became arrogant. Don't worry, Seraphal. Today, I'll kill you here and take the title of Mao Leviathan for myself. I might keep your son alive though. He has a nice body and could always use a personal slave. Her expression turned a little lewd before turning back to her arrogant smirk. Then, Ophis will become the god of the new world. It's fine if he's just a symbol. The system and laws, the doctrine will be constructed by us. Michael, Azazel, and Lucifer, Searsex, your era is over. Azazel suddenly started laughing like a madman to the point where everyone began to have concern for his mental health. Azazel then began a conversation with Kateria before the two began fighting. Searsex looks towards everyone with a kind smile. Me and Michael will continue strengthening the barrier to stop it from affecting the outside any more than it has. A gust of wind slammed into everyone, blowing the desk and a lot of chairs that were in the meeting room out of the window and around the campus. Can you guys fight off the magicians while Graphiat closes the teleportation spell? He looked towards all the young devils and received nods. Good, Seraphal, will you go deal with it? Seraphal's eyes suddenly widened before she gained a serious face and nodded. Seraphal suddenly shot off faster than anyone could see. The young devils looked on in confusion, but remembered their own part in the plans as they left. Seraphal rounded a corner before arriving in the school's gym, away from the fighting outside. Inside the gym there was a human figure, that was incredibly white, or a person. The figure looked at Seraphal with a calculating smile. Ku, so you are Naruto-kun's mother this time? The man licked his lips. And a devil at that. I've never actually studied a devil before. I wonder how he will take it. The man cackled evilly before licking his lips. Seraphal eyed her opponent. He matched the description of Orochimaru from Naruto's peerage, but she could tell he was holding back. He had an ancient feel, far more ancient than anything she's felt before. Looking around she noticed they were alone and the gym was almost bare. So you're Orochimaru? The man nodded with an evil glee. So you're the one that hurt Naruto's peerage? The man nodded with even more glee. Yes, though it was a shame I didn't get to play with them more, they were proving to be quite capable. But they weren't ready for me. They were still babies with no proper teacher. Kukuku. Seraphal raised her staff, the playful look in her eye gone. You know I have used my full power in centuries. I wouldn't mind getting rid of the rust on you. Her words carried such a chilling tone despite her outfit. The wand in her hand cracked and her power went wild. Parts of the building were starting to crack under the pressure of her fully released power. The air around the gym grew cold and ice formed on everything, blocking all entrances to the gym. Orochimaru began to slightly buckle under the pressure. I've heard about you, Orochimaru. The White Snake, father of Yamata no Orochi, harbinger of evil. It was because of you the several factions went to war, and from the looks of it you're trying again. You escape when things look bad and strike from behind. But today, here and now, I will kill you." As soon as her words were down she shot off and punched Orochimaru in the face. Sears, Michael, Graphia. Graphia-chan, are you done? The maid had a look of concentration on her face and held it for a few seconds, not responding. Suddenly her face went back to being blank. "It is done, Sears-sama." The two leaders of each faction nodded and continued pouring magic into the barrier when they were hit by a blast of cold air. Looks like Seraphol found her target. Sears nodded to himself. He looked towards Graphia. "Can you help us strengthen this? Seraphol going full out along with the kids, Azazel, and Kateria is a little too much for just the two of us." Graphia nodded and began to strengthen the barrier. Sears don't know, exactly who is Seraphol Dono fighting? Michael asked, his curiosity piqued by the extra power he felt rising opposite of Seraphol. "You remember the stories of early Earth when the primordials were still here?" Michael nodded. "Well, she is fighting the white snake that brought that era to an end." Michael's eyes widened slightly as he nodded. "I see, that's an opponent rarely seen in history." Michael went back to strengthening the barrier to withstand the attacks of 4 ultimate, Satan-class beings and nearly 100 mid-high-class beings. The children, Valerie, stood back in a more support role while the others fought. She watched as all of them would rush magicians left and right, but she was not a fighter. Sure, she knew a few offensive attacks, but everything else in her arsenal was for defensive purposes only. So she would only send out a defense barrier around herself or her friends when the magicians attempt to flank them. Naruto was standing in the middle of 4 magicians. Raising his right hand to the sky and his left to his chest, he brought his right arm down and thrust his left out. Suddenly water erupted from the ground near his right arm and traveled up to his right, which began to stream out the water. He used his planted arm to help spin him, almost like the dance move jackhammer. After one complete rotation he stood back up and looked around. The portal was closing for the magicians, leaving about 50 stranded. "We can do 50 easily." Naruto smirked. He turned his head and noticed the swordsmen all were still fighting, but in a group so as not to be surrounded. Naruto suddenly felt the air get colder. He knew who made that happen. It had to be his mother. While Graphia also specializes in ice, she was more about control than his mother, who was just raw power. He knew he couldn't get distracted though. Turning, he saw the magicians just about broke in two. One group was attacking the swordsman and the other was heading to him, and Valerie, who was right behind him with their frozen friends. Naruto, seeing this, felt a little bit of fatigue catching up with him. Naruto knew he only one way he could replenish his energy. Opening his hands, chains shot off in any direction. Soon the chains formed a dome around the magicians heading towards him, and a few providing long-ranged support against Zenobia and Kiba. He began his fatigue leaving him with every passing second. Smirking, he brought his 2 hands together. He shot his left forward and out of his hand came about 100 birds, half made of ice, the others water. Naruto watched as each hit the magicians faster than they could make defensive barriers. The ones hit with ice were frozen over. Those hit with water had a water bubble form around their heads until they passed out. Naruto looked up and saw only about 12 magicians remained. "Do you want to give up now?" Naruto asked in an authoritarian voice that made the magicians shiver. But instead of responding, they brought their hands up and readied spells. "You guys just don't know when you're beat." Naruto faced each head on while they released their spells. He created a dome of water to take on the brunt of the attack. Naruto felt something connect, but its power was very low due to the defensive stability of his bubble. Naruto raised his head as the bubble collapsed. His hands held in an "I surrender" posture. But the magicians knew he was attacking. Bringing his hands down, the ice chains each crashed on the magicians from the dome. Each magician was knocked out cold. Turning around, Naruto noticed his remaining peerage members were unfrozen, staring at him a little frightful. "Unfrozen?" They each nodded, albeit slowly. "Seraphol, Kukuku, if you want to kill me you'll have to be quicker than that." Orochimaru goaded. His clothes were torn a little and he was breathing heavily. While he wasn't faster or stronger than his opponent in the small environment, he used his nimbleness to attempt to gain the upper hand. Even though he killed the first Naruto, he needed help from other pantheons to do it, and he didn't escape cleanly. He was nearly obliterated, soul and all. Luckily for him, his current employer saved him in return for this favor. He might be slippery and a liar, but even he knew he wouldn't be able to escape office. Orochimaru suddenly mowed as an ice blast made way towards him. He didn't cleanly escape as his right foot was completely encased in ice. Looking back towards his opponent, he cursed when an ice blast hit him square in the face. With Sears walked calmly down the hall towards the stairs. He was walking with Grafia and Michael. They 50 layers on top of the pre-existing barrier. Azazel was down fighting if his power down was anything to go by, and the magician were all defeated. The only remaining fight taking place was Seraph's. Her power was steady, meaning the battle was in full force. Her power was so strong it was still affecting the school. If he had to guess, he would say the school was maybe a few degrees above freezing. It was troubling that an opponent arrived that could fight a Satan-class devil for more than a few minutes. Walking towards the battle taking place in the schoolyard, he watched as the two heavenly dragons fought for the first time in this new generation. Seraphal, Kukakukuku. The current Leviathan certainly lives up to expectations. Almost makes me want to brand you. Lucky for you, in my current form I can't, at least until I absorb my other half back. Orochimaru spoke with a dazed look. His clothes were covered in frost and tears. His legs were both frozen as well. It was about 100 degrees below zero in this room, and his body was slowly freezing. His core was frozen, including his soul, making it near impossible to escape. His only chance was Ophis coming, but he was sure she had almost no use for him any longer. This battle is over, so apologize, Orochi-tan. If you don't, magical Leviathan will have to end you permanently. Seraphal watched as her opponent showed no remorse. After waiting a minute, she charged her attack, an ice blast, from her staff. When she was done, she fired it, encasing Orochimaru in the ice. When the smoke from the sudden chill, Seraphal blasted another attack, this one of lightning, at the ice block, breaking it and effectively killing Orochimaru. Letting out a breath, the ice slowly began to recede in the area. When it was gone completely, Seraphal walked out towards the schoolyard with everyone else. After her departure, a hole opened from seemingly nowhere. A blank-faced gothic Lolita walked towards the pool of water where Orochimaru was. It seems you have fallen in battle, pet. Your luck has run out. Your other half shall be sufficient in my plans, though. With that, the girl walked out back through the hole. Without another word, and only a side glance, the portal closed. Naruto was suddenly crushed by the woman who gave birth to him. The force of the contact brought Naruto to the ground. Though on the way down, Naruto's head hit the ground, knocking him out. Ah, Naruto-tan? Seraphal began to fuss over Naruto's unresponsive body. Doesn't she do this every time Naruto fights? Issei asked towards his king. Does she do this on purpose? Before Rias could answer, Bova came down and landed next to Issei, who froze and went wide-eyed. Leviathan-sama is a little strange. She is a childish person and Naruto adores it, even though he gets hurt a lot. Bova finished with a sweat drop. Issei backed up slowly, catching Asia's attention. Issei-san? The voice made everyone sans the unconscious Naruto and childish Seraphal. Ah! Issei screamed like a girl and dropped into fetal position and began to rock back and forth. Scales everywhere, no, not there. Suddenly Issei fainted. Ria's power began to leak out of her body as she looked at her pawn's reaction to Bova. There was only one reason he would act like that. Naruto slowly began to wake up. He opened his eye and was met with his mother's face. When he began to sit up, he suddenly felt dread. Turning, he was met with a ball of destruction, courtesy of Rias. He quickly fell unconscious again. Naruto, I told you to stop messing with my pawn's mind. When he fell back over, Rias turned away with crossed arms. Ah, Naruto-tan. Sears could only sigh. God, were devils weird.
That's all for now. If you enjoy this video, then please like, share and do comments.